Warrior Lore. Chapter 2739. In fact, the reason why many half-step heavenly saints felt like they were about to break through was mainly because the suppression between heaven and earth had been greatly weakened. They could clearly feel that they seemed to have become more intimate with the power of the laws of heaven and earth, and that the invisible trajectory was clearer than before. I'm going to go into seclusion and reach the true heavenly saint realm as soon as possible. Du Yunlong did not say much. He shook his cloud robe and left to find a place to go into seclusion. After that, Zhen Qingchun, Yi Piaoling, Qingguyu, and the others also left one by one. In the origin space, I finally succeeded. Du Xiaofu stood in the air and grinned. He felt the changes in the power in his body and was incomparably happy. Compared to his strength in the seizing divinity realm, he felt that he was now extremely powerful. This feeling was indescribably wonderful. Congratulations, Brother Du, for stepping into the truth-severing stage. At this time, He Zhibai, Yu Qingliang, and Yu Chengyu had already flown over and said to Du Xiaofu. They were also exceptionally happy. Du Xiaofu being able to make a breakthrough was also great news for them. Brother Du's strength really leaves us in the dust, Yu Chengliang praised. He admired Du Xiaofu from the bottom of his heart. The few of them were much older than Du Xiaofu. If they were placed in a small world, they could be regarded as the ancestors of that small world. However, compared to this purple-robed youth, the results of their cultivation over the years could not be compared. This was a blow to the few of them. Let's go. Next, it's time for those people from the Divine General's estates to pay the price. Du Xiaofu did not pay attention to their expressions and simply said so. A few months have already passed. I don't know what the situation in the origin space is like now. It seems that we have to hurry. He Zhibai nodded and said solemnly. The 700 to 800,000 young disciples of the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom who entered the origin space were at least experts who had reached the void returning stage. Among these hundreds of thousands of people, the most dazzling were the seizing divinity realm experts. Under the cooperation of the 7 divine generals' estates, they had the strongest strength, coupled with the fact that they had many forces under their command, and after careful preparation, they had enough strength to sweep all the forces here. At this time, the other 3 divine generals' estates, as well as the princes and princesses of the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom, they did not know how they were doing. Du Xiaofu didn't waste any more time. He quickly moved and left the place. While Zhibai, his sister, He Zhibai, his sister. Several people flew through the void, rapidly flying through the primal chaos space. After Du Xiaofu realm, after the divinity spirit realm, the realm divinity power realm divinity realm, as to his realm of, there was S's that's there. To after a yun, to a many people flying many figures, S to many. Let's go take a look. Who knows, we might meet third brother and the others. Yu Chengyu said. Du Xiaofu thought for a while, then looked at the 6th prince and the little princess. You two should enter the origin space first. I'll go investigate first. After thinking for a while, the 2 of them agreed. Then, Du Xiaofu stepped on the road alone and flew into the distance. The 7 divine generals' estates had joined forces to rebel. If he brought the 6th prince and the little princess with him, it would cause a lot of trouble. If they were recognized, they would become the target of public criticism. As for Du Xiaofu, he had just come out of the origin space, so no one knew him. Those who had seen him were all dead. He was not afraid that the 7 divine generals' estates would find trouble with him. So many people are gathered here. What happened? Du Xiaofu's speed was extremely fast. Under the great rock's swift flight, it did not take long for him to reach the origin space. He retracted his aura and only released the power of a seizing divinity realm expert. But even so, as he flew, he attracted the attention of many people. That person's aura is extremely deep. I can't see through it at all. He must be a seizing divinity realm expert. Let's stay away from him so that we don't bump into him. Otherwise, we won't even know how we died. Someone said softly and quickly distanced himself from Du Xiaofu. He did not want to get too close to him. Du Xiaofu did not care about this. He just looked around with shining eyes. He estimated that there were at least 70 to 80,000 people in the crowd. Such a large scale already accounted for 10% of the people who entered the origin space. Brother, may I ask what happened here? Why are there so many people here? Du Xiaofu's figure flashed and directly went to the side of a chubby cultivator. He cupped his fists and asked, Hee hee. The chubby young man looked about 25 or 26 years old, but his strength had reached the late stage of the seizing divinity realm. He was quite extraordinary. A simple and honest smile appeared on his face as he chuckled and said to Du Xiaofu without any awkwardness, Brother, are you also here to seize the treasure? Snatch the treasure? Du Xiaofu was puzzled. The fatty was stunned for a moment before he rubbed his hands together. His eyes narrowed and emitted a golden light as he asked curiously, Don't you know that a great treasure has appeared in this canyon? Everyone who heard the news has rushed over. So that's how it is. Du Xiaofu nodded. It turned out that there was something extraordinary in the canyon that attracted so many experts. He then asked, The treasure must be extraordinary. Otherwise, it would not have attracted so many people. Of course. The chubby man smacked his lips and said, It is said that it is a primal chaos Dao tool left behind from ancient times. As he said, he licked his lips and said with an indescribable greed, Not to mention a complete primal chaos Dao tool. Even if only a fragment is found, it would be a big deal. Primal chaos Dao tool. Du Xiaofu was shocked. He was also shocked by this news. He Jibai had once introduced to him that in the 33 heavens, the weapons were divided into 4 grades, which were divine artifacts, primal chaos Dao tools, and primal chaos Dao tools. And within each grade, it was further divided into elementary grade, middle grade, high grade, and supreme grade. However, the highest grade of primal chaos Dao tool only existed in legends and had never appeared in the world. If one wanted to forcefully trace it back, it was probably only before the beginning of the chaos that experts had succeeded in refining it. Legend had it that the thing Pangu used to create the world was a primal chaos Dao tool. But now, with the passage of time, the primal chaos Dao tool had been buried in the dust of history with generation after generation of experts. It was impossible to see such a powerful primal chaos Dao tool. For an ordinary seizing divinity realm expert, having a middle-grade divine artifact was already extremely good. As for high-grade divine artifacts and supreme divine artifacts, they could only be passed down by the outstanding disciples of those powerful forces and great inheritances. When Du Xiaofu had just entered the primal chaos Dao space, outside the cave where the blood-flame divine lotus was, Dai Xuanzi of the Great Void General's mansion had used a divine artifact as the price to ask many experts to go down and explore. From this, it could be seen that even a divine artifact was quite rare in the 33 heavens. As for primal chaos Dao tools, as the name implied, they carried the power of laws. If ordinary weapons were engraved with rune arrays to increase their power, then primal chaos Dao tools were engraved with the true meaning of laws, the principles of heaven and earth, the true meaning of the great Dao. Every primal chaos Dao tool was rare and could not be refined by anyone below the immortal realm. Once a primal chaos Dao tool was born, it was an existence that could suppress a part of the world. The power of laws contained within it, when poured out, had the power to destroy the world. There is actually a primal chaos Dao tool here. Du Xiaofu's heart thumped as he deeply felt that this was inconceivable. He had heard of primal chaos Dao tools before. Legend had it that after Pangu split the heavens and earth apart, when yin and yang were obscure, the primal chaos Dao tool was extremely rich and the living beings of that time were also endlessly powerful. They used the primal chaos Dao tool left behind by the primal chaos Dao tool to refine powerful divine artifacts. They could cut through the sun, moon, and stars, cut through the greater thousand worlds, and destroy everything in the world. And this was not the most terrifying aspect of a primal chaos Dao tool. A primal chaos Dao tool, in the hands of an expert, could directly cut through the laws of heaven and earth, shatter the invisible order, and cause the power of the world to become chaotic. And when used against an enemy, such a terrifying method was even more terrifying. Even an expert who had mastered a complete primal chaos Dao tool could instantly cut through the domain formed by the primal chaos Dao tool, and it would not pose any threat to the opponent. Therefore, to all the cultivators in the world, a primal chaos Dao tool was the pinnacle of existence, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of young experts here. Even the entire Supreme Chang Rong Heaven might not necessarily have a primal chaos Dao tool in existence. The terrifying 36 Holy Lands were already extremely powerful, but the strongest weapon known was only a primal chaos Dao tool. Hee. The fat man laughed continuously, and his eyes narrowed into thin slits as he said, "If I can obtain that primal chaos Dao tool, even if it's just a small fragment, then I will definitely be able to do whatever I want in this primal chaos Dao tool." Even the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom's imperial family disciples and the young talents of the 10 divine generals' residences would not dare to provoke me. Then, who would dare to fight with me for the treasures here? Even if I obtain first place in the final trial, it would be a matter of course. As the fat man spoke, he was almost drooling. His smile made it seem as if the primal chaos Dao tool was already in his hands, and he looked as if he could die from happiness. Du Xiaofu was amused by the fat man's behavior. He felt that the fat man was quite interesting and could not help but feel a little teasing. He said, "There are many outstanding young experts among the various forces in the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom. There are even many who have reached the great circle of the seizing divinity stage. At this time, there might even be some who have obtained the primal chaos Dao tool and broken through to the true severing stage. With your cultivation, I'm afraid you can't compete with them." "Brother, I don't like what you're saying. In general, the treasures belong to the virtuous. Although those people's cultivation is much stronger than mine, who gets the treasures in the end still depends on their luck. It doesn't necessarily depend on strength." The fat man rolled his eyes and said indifferently. This, Du Xiaofu was speechless and felt powerless to refute. He had to admit that the fat man's words made sense. "I'll go take a look too." Du Xiaofu did not waste any more words with the fat man and directly rushed in the direction of the canyon. Hey, brother, let's go together." When the fat man saw Du Xiaofu run after greeting him, he immediately shouted from behind and quickly chased after him. However, with Du Xiaofu's speed, he left the fat man in the dust in an instant. Soon, he arrived in the sky above the canyon. Looking down from the sky, the surrounding mountain range looked like a crouching dragon. Its shape was winding and its path was steep, and in the direction of the dragon's body, a wide canyon stretched across. It was narrow and straight, as if it was cut by two peerless swords. Waves of fierce and absolute aura spread out from it. At a glance, one could feel a strong killing intent penetrating one's primordial spirit and could not help but shiver. Is there really a primal chaos Dao tool here? Du Xiaofu's eyes focused as he thought to himself. He was able to sense that there was a vast and desolate aura rising from within the gorge. It was like layers of heat waves that enveloped his entire body, causing him to feel an indescribable feeling of reverence, as if he was facing the most ancient and shocking thing. This kind of terrifying aura, even with Du Xiaofu's current cultivation of the true severing realm, could not help but raise his heart to look up to it. The existence of a primal chaos Dao tool was a huge temptation to anyone, and Du Xiaofu was no exception. He flew down and landed in the canyon. As he got closer and closer, the boundless aura became even stronger. In the surroundings, there were many experts moving, and all of them were descending rapidly. A large number of figures descended from the void like dumplings. However, as everyone went deeper and deeper, some of the weaker cultivators all felt their legs trembling. Many people stopped in midair and did not dare to continue descending, because in every inch of space, there was a great pressure that directly suppressed everyone's soul, causing them to tremble uncontrollably. Many cultivators of the void-returning realm had to stop and stay where they were. Those who were protected by the experts of the seizing God realm were much luckier. They were not affected too much and continued to fall into the canyon. In this way, the number of people who had the ability to go down again decreased sharply. There were only about 20,000 people left. However, everyone who was able to descend had their speed reduced considerably. The further down you go, the greater the obstruction. Du Xiaofu activated the strength of the seizing god realm and also felt great pressure. The barbaric power that filled every inch of space was so oppressive that it made it hard for people to breathe. Chapter 2740. This was a fear that came from the depths of one's soul. However, Du Xiaofu only needed to circulate the Xian Qi in his body to suppress the fear in his primordial spirit. It seems that there are still many people rushing here. Du Xiaofu used the power of his primordial spirit to probe and found that in addition to the 70 to 80,000 people who had entered first, there were still many experts coming in. Moreover, there were many figures in the depths of the canyon. They must be those who had entered first. Thinking about it, the news of this place had probably spread throughout the entire origin space. Everyone who knew about it would not let go of such an opportunity. Du Xiaofu suppressed his speed and maintained the same speed as the others. He was not in a hurry to go down. All treasures in the world had their own uniqueness. Just as the fat man had said, it was not certain who could run fast or who was strong enough to obtain it. Everything depended on one's luck. "Hey, brother, why are you running so fast?" Just as Du Xiaofu was thinking about something, a voice came from behind. It came from afar and soon came to his side. There was no need to look back. It was the fat man. "You're fast too," Du Xiaofu said with a smile. "It's a Chaos Dao instrument. How can I not be fast?" The fat man rolled his eyes and said. The two continued to talk as they continued to go down. This time, Du Xiaofu did not leave the fat man behind. Because in his intuition, he felt that the situation below might not be so simple. It was not a bad thing to have someone to accompany him. After some conversation, Du Xiaofu learned from the fat man that his name was Fan Yushu. He came from a force called the Divine Black Sect in the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom. It was an extremely powerful force in the Divine Kingdom. However, this was only relative to other forces. If compared to the 10 Divine Generals' residences, it was still a far cry from them. Fan Yushu, Du Xiaofu looked at the fat man strangely. He was speechless. The other party's huge and thick physique did not fit the description of handsome at all. To think that he was given such a name, it was really not fitting. "What's with that look?" Fan Yushu was indignant and shouted at Du Xiaofu with a sad look. Du Xiaofu spread out his hands and laughed dryly, but did not answer. The two did not stop. Along with the densely packed figures around them, they moved into the depths of the canyon. On both sides, steep stone walls stood erect, as if they had been carved out by the gods. Being in the middle of them, one would feel an indescribable shock. As they kept going, they finally reached the deepest part of the canyon. Here, there was a wide water surface. The water was turbulent, the white waves were rolling, and the roar shook the sky. Standing on the water surface, one could feel a strong, ancient aura. Even though most of the people here were at the seizing god realm, they still could not help but tremble in fear of the desolate and ancient aura. "Where is that Chaos Taoist artifact?" someone asked. His eyes swept across the water surface, searching among the layers of rolling waves. Everyone had come for the primal Chaos Dao artifact. Perhaps many experts were confident in their own strength and knew that it would be difficult for such a treasure to fall into their hands. However, everyone wanted to see just how extraordinary the primal Chaos Dao artifact that could only be heard of in legends was. After arriving here, they seemed to have some intuitive concepts. Perhaps, the pervasive, desolate, and ancient aura was emitted by the Chaos Taoist artifact. If I'm not wrong, it should be underwater. Only by going down to explore can we find the Chaos Taoist artifact. Another person spoke, his eyes burning. After that, the person who spoke didn't think much and directly plunged into the churning water, disappearing without a trace. "Let's go too," another person said. Then, one after another, experts dove into the water to search for the Chaos Taoist artifact. In fact, before this group of people arrived, many experts had already gone down. But at the same time, there were still many people left above, waiting for news from below. However, a long time had passed, and no one had come out of the water. "I keep feeling that there's something strange here. It's better to be careful." Du Xiaofu frowned and said softly to Fan Yushu beside him. The power of his primordial spirit probed into the water, but he could not reach the bottom. He could only probe a short distance and was affected by the ancient aura. In such a situation, he did not dare to let his guard down. Most importantly, Du Xiaofu had a strange feeling in his heart. It seemed that the situation he sensed at this time was very familiar, but he could not remember it at the moment. Everyone knows that once a Chaos Taoist artifact is born, it can directly affect the laws of heaven and earth and the order of the Great Tao. Many things here are very different from the outside world. It must be because of the Chaos Taoist artifact. At this time, someone on the side said aloud. As soon as these words came out, many people nodded in agreement. The Chaos Taoist artifact was too extraordinary, not to mention affecting the exploration of the primordial spirit. Even if it could rewrite the overall order of this area, it was definitely not something inconceivable. Therefore, although everyone was hesitant, they also knew that this was a very normal phenomenon. Brother Du, are you really not going to go down and explore? Next to Du Xiaofu, the fat man Fan Yushu squinted his small eyes and asked impatiently. Du Xiaofu shook his head, then looked at the fat man and said with a smile, I still feel that something is wrong. Why don't you go down and try first? I must go down. The Chaos Taoist artifact is a rare existence in the entire 33 heavens. There's no reason not to fight for it. The fat man's eyes lit up and he continued, Brother Du, wait here first. I'll go and explore. If there's no danger, I'll come up and tell you immediately. Are you really going to help me explore? Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows, very surprised. The two of them were not familiar with each other. So many people have come to compete for the Chaos Taoist artifact. I'm not afraid of you. If it really doesn't belong to me, even if I go down alone, it's useless. The fatty laughed mischievously and said, All right then, be careful. Du Xiaofu nodded and exhorted, Although I didn't notice anything wrong, since you've said it several times, I don't think it's an illusion. Don't worry, I'll pay attention. As he spoke, Fan Yushu slowly moved. He slowly went down, inch by inch, and the soles of his feet slowly touched the surface of the water. Then, his entire fat body also went down step by step, one by one submerged in the water. Everything was normal, similar to the situation of many people who had entered the water before. There was nothing unusual. Fan Yushu followed Du Xiaofu's instructions and slowly dived down. He was not in a hurry at all. The qi in his body was moving at full speed, constantly probing the situation below, while Du Xiaofu was also watching him closely. Suddenly, a wave came crashing down from the surface of the water. It was like a roll of cloth, directly attacking the head of the fatty, completely covering his body on the water. Immediately after, the wave rushed past and quickly fell to the surface of the water. However, the fatty's figure had already disappeared in an instant. The fatty's round body could no longer be seen on the surface of the water. Such a scene caused Du Xiaofu's eyelids to twitch, and he cried out loudly. Fatty! His figure shot out explosively and arrived at Fan Yushu's previous position. However, he was already a step too late. There's a great formation here, not because the order of the world has been affected. In an instant, Du Xiaofu sensed the uniqueness of it. The moment the fatty was engulfed by the waves, his figure disappeared in the blink of an eye, as if he had been dragged underwater. This was definitely not caused by the Chaos Tao artifact changing the rules. Instead, there was an incomparably ferocious array hidden beneath the surface of the water. From the aura emitted by the wave, Du Xiaofu was able to determine the origin of the array formation. Divine Desolate Heaven Lock Formation. It's the work of the 7 Divine Generals' estates again. Du Xiaofu secretly frowned as he said in his heart, It's actually an array formation. Isn't it because of the Chaos Tao artifact? What's going on? Was that array formation set up by someone? Just who has the ability to set up such an array formation here? Even with so many of us here, we didn't notice it at all. In the surroundings, after everyone heard Du Xiaofu's words, they began to discuss. Everyone was puzzled. Why would an array formation appear here? Could it be that someone had deliberately set it up? What are the 7 Divine Generals' estates trying to do by setting up the Divine Desolate Heaven Lock formation here? Doubts arose in Du Xiaofu's heart. He even suspected that the existence of the Chaos Dao artifact was just a cover. Its purpose was to attract many experts. As for the final intention of the 7 divine generals' estates, he was unable to understand it. Not good, we can't go back. Just as Du Xiaofu was deep in thought, he heard someone shout again. The voice attracted even more people to look over. However, there were a few figures descending from the sky. Everyone had a panicked look on their faces, as if they had encountered something terrifying. Not only under the water, the surface should also be enveloped by a large array. We wanted to return to the sky above the canyon, but we found that there was no way out. All we could see was a vast illusion. Among those people, someone said with an indescribably solemn tone. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu did not reveal a surprised expression. He had long seen the miraculous nature of the divine desolate heaven-lock formation. What was different from the last time was that the divine desolate heaven-lock formation this time was clearly more difficult to predict than before. Clearly, there were definitely people in the 7 divine generals' estates who had broken through to the true severing realm. This was definitely not good news for Du Xiaofu. How can this be? A large array that covers such a large area, yet we were completely unaware when we entered. Is there really no way out? Then what should we do next? There is no path to heaven and no door to hell. There is no way out if we go up, and there is an even more terrifying unknown area below. Just who did this? A commotion broke out in the surrounding crowd. Everyone felt their hearts sink, especially those with weak cultivations. All of them felt panic in their hearts. So many of them had entered the canyon, yet no one had discovered the strangeness of this place. From this, it could be seen that this large array was definitely extraordinary. Look, there are more people coming down from above. At this moment, everyone realized that there was an endless stream of figures descending from above, rapidly descending towards this place. And on the faces of those people, there was no difference from before. All of them were completely unaware of the situation here. The 7 divine generals' estates spread the news of the Chaos Dao artifact. Could it be that they want to attract everyone in the origin space? What are they trying to do? Du Xiaofu was still pondering the question in his heart, but he did not get an answer. There were 7 to 800,000 people who had entered the origin space. After receiving the news of the Chaos Dao artifact, there was definitely no one who could resist such a temptation. Even if it was just to take a look, it would be good. Therefore, there would definitely be people rushing over and falling into the array's range. In the end, those who were able to arrive above the water surface were mostly at the seizing god realm. Just the number of these powerful people was absolutely terrifying. If all of them were added up, it could reach tens of thousands. The 7 divine generals' estates must have attracted everyone here because they were brewing some unspeakable secret. This was a huge scam. Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu did not hide anything and immediately spoke of his guess. Of course, he did not mention the matter of the 7 divine generals' estates. After all, He Zhibai, Yu Qingliang, Yu Chengyu, and the others were in his desolate ancient space. If he rashly spoke of everything he knew, he was afraid that the people of the 7 divine generals' estates would be on guard against him. He only said that it was very likely that the array here was deliberately set up by someone, and then spread the news of the Chaos Dao artifact in order to attract countless experts, but the purpose was unknown, and such words made many people panic even more. The strength of the people present was very extraordinary. What Du Xiaofu said, they only needed to think for a moment to feel that this guess was very likely. However, no one could guess the purpose of those who set up the array. Since it's a large array, there must be a corresponding way to break it. With so many of us working together, we should not be trapped here to death. In the crowd, a young man who looked to be about the same age as Du Xiaofu spoke with a powerful voice. That's right. Although we haven't encountered any danger now, danger can come at any time. So we must work together to deal with this accident. In next to no time, many people agreed with him. When the surrounding people heard this, they all nodded in agreement. The person who set up the array must have a plan. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to go through so much trouble. At this moment, since they were aware of such a possibility, then everyone had to work together. Otherwise, they might fall into some kind of scheme. Not long after, everyone started to move and gathered in one place. In my opinion, instead of being trapped here and waiting for something to happen, why don't we take the initiative to attack and go under the water to find out who's behind all of this? Du Xiaofu spoke in a timely manner with a deep gaze. He stared at the undulating waves on the surface of the water and thought in his heart, I wonder how Fan Yushu is at this moment, and if anything unexpected will happen. Some people agreed with his words, but a large number of people objected. They thought that it was too risky. If you're afraid of every little thing, what's the use of embarking on the path of cultivation? You might as well be at ease and be an ordinary person. An expert stepped out and said, Everyone, please do as you wish. I'll take my leave first. Du Xiaofu did not care about everyone's attitude. He was just saying that and would not force others to do anything. Most importantly, he knew better than anyone else that the 7 divine generals' mansion's motives were definitely not simple. Since he had lured everyone here, he wouldn't believe that he had no ulterior motives, even if he was beaten to death. One had to know that the 7 divine generals' mansions dared to target the Yuqing divine kingdom and even the disciples of the imperial family. Splash! Du Xiaofu did not hesitate and directly dove into the water. After a circle of waves, he disappeared. Those who are willing to take the initiative to attack, let's go down together and take care of each other. After Du Xiaofu left, many people began to move. They began to break through the water's surface in an organized manner and dive down. Just as Du Xiaofu's entire body was several feet into the water, he felt an incomparably powerful force attacking him, tightly wrapping around his body. This feeling was as if he was grabbed by an invisible giant hand and pulled down with all his strength. What a terrifying divine wilderness heaven-lock array. It's completely different from the previous encounter. Du Xiaofu's heart trembled, filled with endless astonishment. The reason why he dared to dive in was because he had the absolute hegemony domain to rely on. No matter what danger he encountered, he could retreat at any time. He gave it a try. Although the spatial domain was greatly affected at the bottom of the water, it was not enough to completely trap him. He could still ignore the uniqueness of the divine wilderness heaven-lock array and freely travel through it like before. After all, this divine wilderness heaven-lock array was not the one from ancient times. Even if it fully displayed its power, it would not even be a millionth of that time. Not to mention that the person controlling the array was only a cultivator who had just entered the true severing realm. He was probably far from being able to activate the full power of this imitation. However, Du Xiaofu also focused all of his attention and carefully observed all of the movements. Because at this time, the divine wilderness heaven-lock array should be able to barely display the effect of extermination. It had an extremely strong offensive power, and even Du Xiaofu, who had broken through to the true severing realm, did not dare to let his guard down. Although this was an imitation, it was an imitation of the powerful ancient array that could envelop the entire 33 heavens. If they underestimated him, they wouldn't even know how they died in the end. Chapter 2741. Du Xiaofu carefully dived into the depths of the water. His primordial spirit power was fully released, spying on all movements. He could sense that there were quite a number of people following closely behind him. Du Xiaofu did not pay attention to them and continued to descend. Until a certain moment, the space at the bottom of the water suddenly changed. The surging undercurrent suddenly disappeared, and Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in another space. A faint mist lingered, rising like a haze. This mist had the effect of blocking the primordial spirit power. Du Xiaofu used the power of the seizing divinity realm, but could only detect a range of a few dozen miles. However, after he used all his strength, the mist in front of him completely disappeared, and the world became clear. Under his observation, a vast area appeared. It was exactly the same as the outside world, and everything existed. Du Xiaofu knew that this was the inner space of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation. It was an independent place, and did not exist at the bottom of the water. This should be the center of this large formation. Du Xiaofu knew very well that he had come to a crucial place. Perhaps he could see many people who had arrived here before him. Of course, There should be people from the 7 divine generals' residences. Fan Yushu. His gaze swept across the surroundings. When a figure entered his line of sight, Du Xiaofu's pupils suddenly shrank. He saw a round fatty. At this moment, he was moving forward timidly not far away. He looked a little sneaky. This fatty was none other than Fan Yushu, whom Du Xiaofu had just met not long ago. Without thinking, Du Xiaofu rushed forward. Very quickly, he was behind the fatty and slapped him on the shoulder. Who? 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 The fatty was shocked, as if he had met a ghost. He was so frightened that his soul left his body. He jumped up high and turned around. When he saw the purple-robed young man in front of him, he was startled for a moment. Then, he heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Brother Du, you scared me to death, but it's great to be able to meet you." He patted his chest with lingering fear. He had suffered quite a shock. "Did you find anything after coming in?" Du Xiaofu asked with a chuckle. "No." Fan Yushu's fat head shook like a rattle drum as he said to Du Xiaofu, "After I dived into the water, the waves hit my head, and there was a huge force trying to pull me down. I didn't even have the strength to resist. After that, I came here and got lost in the fog. I didn't find anything." Du Xiaofu understood when he heard this. With Fan Yushu's strength, the power of his soul could only detect an area of a few dozen kilometers. It was very difficult for him to travel too far, so it was normal that he didn't discover anything. The fatty looked at Du Xiaofu again and asked, "Brother Du, how did you find me?" Du Xiaofu didn't hide anything and directly told Fan Yushu what he had guessed. Of course, he didn't mention anything about the 7 divine generals' mansions. Scam. This is a huge scam. Who dares to commit such a heinous act? Does he want to be the enemy of the entire Yuqing divine kingdom? Fan Yushu shouted angrily. He seemed to be quite angry. Originally, he really thought that there was a Taoist instrument of chaos here. But now, it seemed that everyone had been fooled. Most importantly, until now, no one knew why all of this had happened, and what was the motive of the people behind all of this. "Let's go. I think there will be more interesting things waiting for us inside." Du Xiaofu's eyes darkened, and he pulled the fatty away. He had already formed a grudge with the divine generals' mansions. Dai Xuanjun, Zhong Su, Wang Qishuan, Qi Weicheng, Qi Weidun, and the others had all died at his hands. At this time, Tantai Ruwei was trapped in the ancient, desolate space. It could be said that he was completely on the opposite side of the 7 divine generals' mansions. In addition, ever since he learned that this change was likely to be planned by the ancient ancestor of the Baifeng Divine Bird Clan and the ancient emperor of the Human Clan, Du Xiaofu was even more determined to get involved to the end. Du Xiaofu led Fan Yushu through the void. Not long after, they heard a voice behind them. "2 more people have broken in. Which sector you from?" The voice came from afar, and soon, it arrived beside the 2 of them. "Who are you?" Fan Yushu frowned and asked. In front of him was a young man. His figure was tall and slender like a spear. A gilded cloak was draped over his shoulders, making him look heroic and exuding a natural domineering aura. Behind him were several young men, all of whom had extraordinary appearances and profound auras. Experts of the truth-severing realm. Du Xiaofu's eyes narrowed as he looked at the domineering young man and thought to himself. He quickly figured out the identity of this person. He should be one of the 7 divine generals' mansions. They had finally shown up. "Boy, our young master one asked you a question. Can't you hear him?" Hearing that Fan Yushu did not answer the domineering young man's question and instead asked him a question, the followers behind the young man immediately became furious and shouted at the fatty and Du Xiaofu. "Young master one?" The fatty was stunned again and tried to open his eyes wide. Could it be young master one Yiming from the divine general's residence? "Boy, at least you're knowledgeable. Since you know who young master one is, why don't you tell us who you are?" Behind the domineering young man, another person stepped forward and pointed at Fan Yushu in a stern voice and shouted, "So it really is young master one Yiming. I am Fan Yushu of the divine black sect." Fatty immediately bowed respectfully with his hands clasped in front. "Divine black sect?" When Yiming raised his eyebrows and said, "Since you've come in yourselves, then please." "Where to?" Fan Yushu's eyes narrowed as he asked cautiously. From the tone, It didn't sound like there was anything good waiting for him. If I tell you to leave, then hurry up and leave. What's with all this nonsense? Before Wen Yiming could answer, another subordinate shouted from behind him. Fan Yushu wasn't someone to be trifled with and was about to explode in anger. His divine black sect was a powerful faction in Yuqing Divine Kingdom. How could he let someone order him around like this? But before the fatty could do anything, Du Xiaofu stopped him. He could see Wen Yiming's cultivation, but Fan Yushu couldn't. Go with them. We'll act according to the situation. Du Xiaofu transmitted his voice to the fatty. Fan Yushu suppressed his anger and was about to say something when he saw a figure fly over and arrive beside Wen Yiming in the blink of an eye. When he saw the purple-robed young man standing in front of Wen Yiming, his expression changed abruptly. Then, he moved closer to Wen Yiming's ear and muttered. As he spoke, he glanced at Du Xiaofu. Wen Yiming's expression darkened as he listened to his subordinate's report. Looks like I've been exposed. Seeing their actions, Du Xiaofu sighed in his heart. He had hidden himself all the way here to find out the truth of the 7 divine generals' residences and make his next move easier. But as soon as he entered the center of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation, his identity was exposed. Indeed, when Yiming's gaze swiveled and landed on Du Xiaofu, his tone was gloomy as he said, "Brat, you really have some ability. To actually be able to see through the ins and outs of the divine wilderness heaven-lock array." He stared at the purple-robed young man without moving. He slowly stepped forward and closed in on Du Xiaofu. At the same time, a ferocious aura shot out from his body and fluctuated in the void, causing heaven and earth to rumble. His subordinates behind him all felt their legs go soft and were about to fall. True severing realm. Beside Du Xiaofu, Fan Yushu was also in a state of shock. He couldn't even speak properly. Under that terrifying pressure, he finally realized the cultivation level of the domineering young man in front of him. What ulterior motive do you have for setting up this formation? Du Xiaofu didn't deny Wen Yiming's words, but instead asked him a question. Needless to say, what he said above the water had long been heard by someone, and it just so happened to be reported to Wen Yiming. And after that, many of the experts who entered the formation must have joined forces and caused quite a commotion. Otherwise, Wen Yiming's expression wouldn't be so ugly. Kid, Dai Xuanjun, Zhong Su, Wang Qixuan, and many others died in your hands, right? Did you take the 6th prince and the little princess away? Wen Yiming didn't answer Du Xiaofu's question, but instead asked directly. Obviously, after Dai Xuanjun and the others were killed, the news had spread to the ears of the other members of the 7 divine generals' residences. You're right, I was the one who killed those people. I, Du Xiaofu, have never been lenient to those who dare to provoke me. Du Xiaofu didn't have any intention of denying it. Instead, he waved his robe and said domineeringly. Since he had already walked into the center of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation, it wasn't difficult to find out the motive of the 7 divine generals' residences, so there was no need to hide it any longer. Kid, in the past, there were many people who were arrogant in front of me, but their outcome was the same. That is, they died without leaving behind even a scrap. Wen Yiming's big hair fluttered behind him, and his tone was filled with an intense chill. The way he looked at Du Xiaofu was as if he was looking at a dead person. In the past, there were many people who spoke to me like you, and their outcome was the same. That is, they died without leaving behind even a scrap. Yes, Dai Xuanjun, Dai Xuanzi, Wang Qixuan, Zhong Su, etc. There are too many examples, Du Xiaofu said unhurriedly, returning the same words back to him. Kid, I don't care what your background is, but since you dare to interfere in the matters of the divine general's residences, I will definitely make you regret being born into this world. As Wen Yiming spoke, the aura on his body became even more intense. The formless laws in the air were mobilized by him, condensing into a huge sharp sword that slashed down towards Du Xiaofu's head. That's the true severing realm, Brother Du. Run quickly. Before Du Xiaofu could move, Fan Yushu, who was beside him, shouted loudly. His figure shot out and quickly escaped into the distance. However, after flying for dozens of miles, he felt that the atmosphere was somewhat strange. In the blink of an eye, the fatty's eyes couldn't help but widen, as if he had seen something unbelievable. His eyes were filled with indescribable shock. In his line of sight, the purple-robed youth stood with his hands behind his back, motionless in midair. A purple-gold light radiated from his body, making him look as dazzling as a purple-gold scorching sun. It was indescribably mystical. Under the cover of such light, the light sword that when Yiming slashed out seemed to have sunk into a swamp when it was about 10 feet away from Du Xiaofu's head, and its speed became abnormally slow. Although the sharp sword burst forth with endless ferocious power, waves of powerful energy vibrations caused the void to tremble violently. It was still unable to cut the purple-robed youth's head. Brother Du is actually also in the true severing realm. Fan Yushu was shocked. His eyes widened, and he rubbed his eyes fiercely, feeling extremely incredulous. This purple-robed youth that he had just met was actually also so terrifying in strength, so strong. Opposite Du Xiaofu, when Yiming's face also changed greatly, and he looked at his opponent in disbelief. While his heart was shocked, he couldn't help but sigh incomparably. Dai Xuanjun and the others didn't die unjustly at all. This purple-robed youth was really too strong. Just the strength that was displayed at this time made Wen Yiming feel somewhat powerless even if he wanted to. Such strength, in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom, could definitely be ranked at the forefront of the younger generation. Didn't you say that you would make me regret being born in this world? Coincidentally, I also have a hobby of making people regret being born in this world. Then let's compete and see who can make the other regret being born in this world more. Du Xiaofu snorted coldly, and the Shaozi imprint in his mind lit up. The power of the primordial spirit was vast and mighty, and it connected with the power in the void. In the domineering domain outside his body, another huge flash of lightning flashed and fiercely bombarded Wen Yiming's sharp sword. Boom! The void trembled violently, and the space domain trembled. A lightning beam as thick as a mountain appeared out of thin air, brazenly bombarding the sharp sword that was bound in the space domain. With a loud explosion, the sharp sword in the void shattered, exploding into balls of bright light, and then transformed into a large number of runes, dancing in the void. Oh! When Yiming was pushed back, and a muffled groan came from his throat, it was obvious that he had suffered a great shock. And after this attack, Du Xiaofu directly flew up and pounced towards Wen Yiming. At the same time, the domineering domain expanded, wanting to envelop the opponent's body. However, Wen Yiming obviously felt that the space domain outside Du Xiaofu's body was filled with a dangerous aura and quickly retreated. True severing stage, and one of the 4 great primordial laws, the space domain. Wen Yiming was shocked, and his mind was thinking quickly, but he could not figure out the background of this purple-robed youth. Faced with Du Xiaofu's domineering words, he snorted lightly and said, "So what if you're in the true severing stage? You can't escape death today." As he spoke, his figure moved into the air, and a strong wind blade swept out, flying in the void like a flying knife. Kill! When Yiming roared, and the cloak behind him was pulled taut. He was like a son of the wind, moving in all directions, drifting left and right. At the same time, the wind blades around him swept out, brazenly attacking. Chi. Under such an attack, the space was shattered into pieces. Under the continuous attack of the wind blades, Du Xiaofu's domineering domain was slashed with countless gaps and suffered great damage. Void 8 trigrams, rise for me, Du Xiaofu shouted, and then the fingers on both hands intertwined, forming a strange hand seal. A mysterious rhythm suddenly fluctuated out in the void. As his hand seals condensed continuously, with a whoosh, a huge 8 trigrams diagram appeared in the sky above his head, whining as it spiraled. At the same time, the power of thunder rippled under the 8 trigrams diagram, like a sea of thunder, steaming with a terrifying aura. Then, with a whoosh, a blazing sea of fire rose up, burning fiercely under Du Xiaofu's feet. Just after the thunder and fire sea appeared, under the 8 trigrams diagram, mountains and rivers appeared. Rivers and lakes appeared. Mountains shook, and everything sprouted. What a terrifying method! When Yiming's eyes were shocked, and the corners of his eyes twitched. He was moved by Du Xiaofu's method. With his true severing realm cultivation, he could clearly feel that in the space domain of the purple-robed young man, there seemed to be an independent world. In that world, everything existed, and it was constantly evolving. When Yiming clearly knew the pros and cons, and he had to keep a distance from that guy. Otherwise, once he stepped into his domain, it would be an extremely dangerous thing. You dare to spoil the great matter of the Divine General's mansion. Today, I will use your life as the price to pay for what you have done. When Yiming's eyes narrowed, and he controlled the sharp wind blades in the sky to attack like raindrops. You dare to use such a small trick in front of me. Du Xiaofu snorted softly, and his body suddenly shook. The power of thunder was like a thin snake swallowing and spitting, crushing a large number of wind blades into nothingness. World-defying tornado, kill. Staring at Du Xiaofu, when Yiming once again exhaled and shouted. His voice was vast and loud, like a sudden clap of thunder, shaking the void. Just as his voice fell, the countless wind blades around him whistled even more violently and began to swirl in a large area. In an instant, it turned into a huge tornado, letting out a terrifying howl. Under the guidance of this tornado, the void was stirred into a mess, as if it was in a state of chaos. Around him, large mountain ranges rose from the ground, and pieces of the earth cracked and collapsed, turning into messy soil and stones that flew with the wind. This huge tornado looked like an indomitable giant, releasing an incomparably terrifying power, causing the entire world to tremble. Rumble. The space kept shaking violently. The tornado that seemed to connect the heavens and the earth was like a huge stick that stretched between the heavens and the earth, stirring with all its might. The tornado shook the world, brazenly suppressing and fiercely attacking Du Xiaofu's 8 trigrams in the void. Heavenly lightning and earthly fire, suppress the heavens. These words came out of Du Xiaofu's mouth. His hand seals changed, and the 8 trigrams in the void spun rapidly, transforming into a shadow. Rumble. Huff, huff, huff. Thunder roared, and earthly fire raged. Each of them transformed into a long dragon, rushing out from Du Xiaofu's head and feet respectively. In the process of moving forward, the bodies of the 2 long dragons twisted and then quickly intertwined, further fusing into an even thicker dragon. The body of this huge dragon was formed by the power of thunder and fire. It carried the power to destroy the world as it rushed towards Wen Yiming's terrifying tornado. Roar! The thunder and fire dragon roared, shaking the world. The immeasurable dragon twisted in the void, and the dragon's tail swept out, striking down at the huge tornado. Rumble! A huge shock wave spread out, and the tornado shook violently under the attack of the dragon's tail, causing a huge gap to appear. The dragon's tail was also crushed by the strong wind, shattering into nothingness. When the 2 powerful and overbearing forces collided, they seemed to be on par with each other. Large amounts of runes were shattered and turned into the purest energy fluctuations in the air. Roar! The thunder and fire dragon roared again, and the dragon's body moved across the sky. Like a rope, it wrapped around the tornado from the bottom. Then, an unparalleled power erupted from the dragon's body, tyrannical in the world, violently released. Woo woo woo! Under this immense power, the tornado seemed to let out a wail as it was ruthlessly twisted by the dragon, unable to move. A moment later, under the power of the thunder and fire dragon, the tornado was directly twisted apart. From the bottom to the top, it exploded inch by inch, turning into the purest wind energy. It danced wildly in the void, destroying everything in its path. A terrifying energy storm formed, vast and mighty, shaking the heavens and earth, shaking the 9 heavens and shaking the 9 hells. Oh! The huge dragon let out a whimper, and in the end, it also exploded. The purest power of thunder and fire spread out, piercing through and burning, creating one black hole after another in the void. It was terrifying and terrifying. All of this took a long time to describe, but it only happened in the span of a few breaths. Seeing the thunder and fire dragon dissipate together, Wen Yiming let out a long sigh of relief. When he saw the purple-robed youth's 8 trigrams diagram in the air, he was truly shocked by the terrifying aura that filled the air. However, in the end, the fusion of the two powers of law was only a draw with his wind attribute power. This scene caused Wen Yiming to involuntarily laugh coldly in his heart. That fellow was actually just a paper tiger that looked good but was useless. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, a faint voice suddenly sounded in his ears. "It's time to end this, young master," one of the Tsangluan divine general's estate. Wen Yiming was shocked, as if he had seen a ghost, and all the hair on his body stood on end. Chapter 2742. Wen Yiming was horrified. This voice was too familiar. Wasn't it the voice of the purple-robed youth who called himself Du Xiaofu? He didn't need to think at all. He displayed the complete power of the wind attribute law, and his figure quickly retreated, wanting to hide far away. However, in the next instant, his heart sank even more, as if he had suffered the greatest nightmare. "Oh no!" When Yiming cried out, his heart thumping wildly. He only felt that his body seemed to have sunk into a quagmire. No matter how he struggled, it was difficult to escape. That terrifying sticky force pulled at his body. Under the constant struggle, not only did he not escape, but he felt like he was sinking deeper and deeper. The strength of the true severing stage is only us. Beside Wen Yiming, Du Xiaofu stepped out of the void, revealing his figure, and said disdainfully. He used the first form of Fuyao and directly appeared beside Wen Yiming. Under the cover of the absolute hegemony domain, the other party couldn't even escape. In the sky, that huge 8 trigrams diagram moved horizontally and also shrouded down. All kinds of law power fluctuations in the air suppressed down wave after wave, brazenly pouring down on Wen Yiming's body. It was like a mountain, crushing down one after another. "Ah!" Wen Yiming let out a long hiss, enduring the enormous pressure. His back bent bit by bit, as if he was carrying a heavy burden. Pooh! Not long after, he spat out a mouthful of turbid black blood, causing his face to turn pale in an instant. How can he be so strong? At this moment, when Yiming finally realized how huge the gap between him and the purple-robed youth in front of him was. No matter what, he couldn't understand. Since the other party could enter the origin space, he must have broken through to the true severing stage from the God-seizing stage not long ago. How could he be so strong to such a terrifying extent? Not only Wen Yiming, but not far away, his subordinates were also all dumbfounded. Young Master One is actually going to lose. This is too fast. That purple-robed youth is really too scary. How can he be so strong? Where did he come from? Which great power is he the successor of? Just now, he called himself Du Xiaofu, but I don't think I've heard of this name before. Could it be that he is one of the successors of one of the 36 Holy Lands? Everyone was shocked to the extreme. They were terrified by Du Xiaofu's strength. On the other side, Fan Yusu's expression. On his round and chubby face, a pair of small eyes tried hard to widen as he stared closely at Du Xiaofu. It was extremely exaggerated, but he was of the Lord Young Master of the Divine General Tsang's Divine General. He was definitely a terrifying powerhouse. In the entire Yuqing Divine Kingdom, he was one of the strongest. Even in the entire imperial family and the 10 godly generals' residences, he was one of the top few. But at this time, the famous Wen Yiming couldn't even last a few moves against Du Xiaofu and was about to be subdued. The fat man's body started to tremble. He could imagine how powerful this guy, whom he had just met, was. "Let's go and save young Master One." Just then, one of Wen Yiming's subordinates shouted. In this place, young Master One was their leader. Once he was defeated, in front of a true severing realm elite, no one would be able to escape. "But that guy is too strong. We are no match for him," another person said in a trembling voice. He was terrified by Du Xiaofu's aura and had lost the courage to attack. "We can't care about that anymore. Kill." Someone's eyes flashed with coldness as he let out a deep roar. His figure flashed out, carrying a terrifying might as he charged towards Du Xiaofu. Kill. When the others saw this, they moved successively, and they swept up terrifying attacks that covered the sky as they smashed down towards Du Xiaofu. These people were all in the seizing god realm. None of them were weak. When their attacks gathered together, it was indescribably terrifying. Colorful lights shot out. Layers of killing intent were vast and mighty, tearing the void and shaking the heavens and earth. However, when these lights attacked Du Xiaofu's space domain, they seemed to be frozen and could not move forward at all. Then, with a loud bang, all the abilities exploded and turned into a large area of flowing talisman symbols. It was as if a group of ants were dancing. Everyone was shocked by this result. The power of a true Severing Realm cultivator was too terrifying. It's time to end this. Du Xiaofu didn't pay attention to the actions of the people outside and just said lightly. He controlled the Void 8 trigrams and activated the endless power of laws to suppress Wen Yiming. At the same time, he flipped his 10 fingers and condensed the power of restrictions, which landed on Wen Yiming. The terrifying power was vast and mighty, brazenly oppressing and destroying everything. Wen Yiming was pressed down until his back bent. The sweat on his forehead dripped down like beads. "Kid, you can't kill me," Wen Yiming shouted mournfully. His face was incomparably ferocious. He said fiercely, "If we were in the outside world, maybe I would be afraid of you. But in this divine wilderness heavenlock formation, you can't kill me no matter what." He desperately surged his aura from head to toe, resisting Du Xiaofu's domineering domain. At the same time, a compass-like object appeared in his hand. Wen Yiming clenched his teeth tightly. While enduring the immense pressure, he also injected the power of his primordial spirit into the compass. Ka. The compass rotated, giving off a metallic sound. Then, the space suddenly trembled, and an indescribable charm surged out, as if some kind of mechanism had been activated. Not good. Du Xiaofu's eyes narrowed as he sensed an extremely dangerous aura. In just an instant, he realized that this was definitely the power of the divine wilderness heavenlock formation. Before it was activated, it made people tremble inexplicably. "Ha ha ha. Kid, you're dead meat." Wen Yiming laughed heartily, his face sinister. Following his laughter, the surrounding space trembled violently. Then, a huge sharp sword appeared out of thin air, slashing towards Du Xiaofu's head. Following that, cracks silently spread out under the sharp sword, like a watermelon that had been exposed to the scorching sun. In an instant, it tore apart the domineering domain around Du Xiaofu, shattering it into pieces. Taking advantage of such a situation, Wen Yiming's figure suddenly stood upright and immediately retreated, pulling a distance away from Du Xiaofu. Boom! The huge sword slashed down, causing a huge roar, and the void trembled along with it. The radiant Void 8 trigrams in the sky also exploded under the attack of the sword, turning into fragments and disappearing into the void. Following that, everything around Du Xiaofu instantly collapsed. God-binding grip. Du Xiaofu's gaze was solemn as he let out a clear shout. Just as the huge sword was about to slash down, his spatial laws were activated. It was as if an invisible hand had appeared in the air, fiercely grabbing onto the sharp sword. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Under the attack of the powerful force, the sword's slashing motion came to a sudden stop, emitting a violent buzzing sound. However, not long after, there was a strong distortion in the void. Accompanied by a terrifying explosion, the huge sword shattered, exploding into pieces and falling into the void. As for Du Xiaofu, he was also forced back by the powerful impact. A muffled sound came from his throat, as he suffered quite a bit of shock. He actually withstood it. When Yiming's eyes moved, he was deeply shocked by Du Xiaofu's strength. Even with the help of the divine wilderness heavenlock formation's power, it did not cause the purple-robed youth any harm. This made him even more terrified. That compass should be the item that can control the divine wilderness heavenlock formation. Du Xiaofu stabilized his body and stared at Wen Yiming's hand. The black compass attracted his attention. Du Xiaofu's eyes revealed a hint of greed as he evilly smiled. Although this divine wilderness heavenlock formation was a replica, it was still quite extraordinary. At the very least, in the hands of the 7 divine generals' estates, it could be used to sweep away the entire younger generation in the primordial chaos space. It was also because he possessed several types of law powers, especially his attainments in spatial laws. Otherwise, if he was trapped, it would be quite dangerous. Therefore, Du Xiaofu wanted to take such a treasure for himself. Kid, you are called Du Xiaofu, right? To have the ability to save the 6th prince and the little princess, and to be able to see through this divine wilderness heaven-lock formation's extraordinariness, you are indeed a rare talent. But no matter where you are from, today, this will be your burial ground. Being stared at by Du Xiaofu, Wen Yiming coldly said. He had already retreated far away, creating a sufficient distance between him and Du Xiaofu. Although this purple-robed youth was quite powerful, to the point where even he had been careless, Wen Yiming believed that with the help of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation, it would be difficult for him to escape death today. Do you think that by controlling the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation, you can deal with me? Du Xiaofu coldly snorted and said disdainfully. Although he said so, he was secretly on guard. An array that was created by imitating an ancient peerless array was definitely unimaginably powerful. It must have its own powerful points, so he could not let his guard down in the slightest. Since you want to die so much, then come and try out the true power of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation. Wen Yiming also snorted as he spoke. The cloak behind him fluttered, becoming taut and fluttering. He raised the compass in his hand, and waves of tyrannical primordial spirit power surged out and poured into it. Hum, hum, hum. The compass shone brightly and buzzed endlessly, bringing with it a vast aura that could suppress the heavens and earth. Rays of light pierced through the air, filling every inch of the surrounding space. Then, he saw that all directions, the heavens, and the earth suddenly turned black, as if the night had suddenly arrived, and there was no longer any light. It was as if this area had sunk into the most terrifying hell. Under such a scene, rays of resplendent light appeared in the night sky, like streaks of lightning that tore through the night, flashing and dazzling. Brother Du, be careful. Not far from Du Xiaofu, Fan Yushu shouted out a warning. After such a situation occurred, he could feel an extremely shocking and terrifying aura. The moment it appeared, it suppressed his primordial spirit, causing him to fall to the ground. The rest of Wen Yiming's followers were the same, and each of them was in an extremely sorry state. A group of seizing divinity experts, under the deterrence of the Great Array, could not even stand. More importantly, what they felt was only the aftermath, and most of the power was already rushing towards Du Xiaofu. Good timing. These words came out of Du Xiaofu's mouth. He stood where he was without moving and looked at the resplendent rays of light that were flashing towards him. These rays of light approached rapidly, and soon in the void, the shapes of peerless swords appeared one after another. It was like a peerless sword rain, whistling through the air and destroying everything. Every sword carried an unparalleled ferocious aura, and as it flew through the air, it was as if it could cut through the 9 heavens and the 9 hells. It was extremely domineering. Such a terrifying scene. Not to mention Du Xiaofu, who was at the center. Even the surrounding seizing divinity experts trembled fiercely from the bottom of their hearts. As for the people from the divine general's residences, such a scene made their hearts calm down. Is first young master activating the divine wilderness heaven-lock array at full strength? This power is too terrifying. Every sword that slashes down has the power of an ordinary severing true realm expert. If I were to receive it, I'm afraid I would be injured by a graze and die upon contact. This is great. No matter how strong that kid is, he will definitely not have a chance to escape from such an attack. First young master, kill him. Since he dares to spoil our plans, he can only atone for his crimes with death. Many of Wen Yiming's subordinates spoke, cheering for him. They seemed to be able to see the purple-robed youth being ground into pieces by the sharp swords that filled the sky under this large array. While everyone was secretly shocked in their hearts, they were also very clear that this was not the full power of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation. If it was under the control of a seasoned divinity expert, not to mention that there was only one purple-robed youth, even if there were 10,000 of him, it would be absolutely effortless to annihilate them all. Brother Du, quickly retreat. Contrary to the emotions of the crowd, Fan Yushu was constantly roaring. The calmer Du Xiaofu appeared, the more anxious he was in his heart. Under the suppression of that terrifying power, the fatty's heart was like dead ashes. He knew in his heart that there was probably no way for him to escape today. However, Du Xiaofu was different. With his true severing realm strength, he still had enough strength to fight. However, that kid seemed to have been petrified, standing motionless on the spot. Kid, give up resisting. With just you can't escape the annihilation of this large array. Why don't you die a quick death? At this moment, when Yiming said coldly, his eyes were filled with endless pride as he controlled the waves of sword rain to chop down. In an instant, it surrounded the purple-robed youth. Swish! Without a sound, the purple-gold heavenly tower appeared in Du Xiaofu's hands. He stood in the air, his body surrounded by purple-gold light, as if he was a god. He still stood on the spot, but the purple-gold heavenly tower was slowly raised above his head, pointing straight at the sky. At the same time, a shout burst out from his mouth, "Heaven and earth are empty." Boom, 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 boom. Terrifying explosion shook the air, and the void collapsed under this shout. It was as if an ancient city wall had collapsed, as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. Immediately after, a dazzling light surged out from the broadsword's body. Tiny runes swirled and quickly condensed, transforming into a vast sword beam that pierced through the heavens and earth. The sword beam radiated in all directions. It was thicker than a mountain as it rose into the sky. Boundless light was emitted, filling the darkness. It was as if at this moment, there was only this sword left in the universe. Heaven and earth were empty, and there was only one sword. The radiance of the countless sword rain outside was suppressed and became extremely dim. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Waves of strange energy vibrated, leading to an incomparably vast pressure that suppressed every inch of space. What kind of move is this? How can it be so terrifying? Du Xiaofu's sword attack immediately caused the expressions of the nearby people to change. There were no weaklings present, so they quickly saw how terrifying this sword attack was. After the sword light appeared, space seemed to have been sealed, and it was the only thing in the world. He really has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. It's the power of the spatial laws again. When Yiming's eyes moved as well, he was horrified by this sword. He had no doubt that if he were to directly receive this sword attack, he would definitely suffer a huge injury. In fact, these people could only feel that this sword beam was incomparably terrifying, but they could not see through the essence of this sword attack. Back then, Du Xiaofu had been fighting fiercely with Patriarch Fengsan and Patriarch Zhangjie in the Beast Alliance. He had comprehended this sword attack when he was on the verge of death. However, it was only now that he had broken through to the true severing stage that he truly understood the essence of this sword attack. This was definitely not an ordinary martial technique, but a domineering and peerless way of using the spatial laws. Under the influence of the sword beam, the surrounding space was greatly affected, forming a strange domain. This domain was similar to Du Xiaofu's absolute dominating space, but it was not the same. At this moment, Du Xiaofu felt as if he had become the overlord of this space. He could control everything here. As long as it was within the range of the sword beam, everything could be easily destroyed. So what if you have more tricks up your sleeve? Even if the Heavenly King comes today, he won't be able to save you. Seeing the aura rising from Du Xiaofu's body, when Yiming's eyes were cold as he said with a sinister smile, the current divine wilderness heaven-lock formation was controlled by several true severing stage experts. Although it could only barely activate the power of annihilation, it was definitely not something that an ordinary true severing stage expert could withstand. He was absolutely certain that in the next moment, the purple-robed youth would definitely die without a complete corpse. Slash. On the other side, Du Xiaofu raised the sword beam, lightly shouted, and fiercely slashed down. Chapter 27:43. Slash. On the other side, Du Xiaofu raised his sword gleam, shouted loudly, and slashed down fiercely. Rumble. The sword gleam that supported the heavens and the earth moved, and the void rumbled. Under Du Xiaofu's powerful burst, this sword gleam that seemed to be the only thing that existed between heaven and earth suddenly slashed into the void. A terrifying explosion sounded, and the entire sky was split open, and a wide crack appeared, stretching across everything. The sword gleam exploded, and the energy was vast and mighty. The void was shaking, the thick earth was rolling, and the space was shaking. Crack. Just as the sword gleam finally landed, it was accompanied by a slight cracking sound. Immediately after, a crack could be seen in the pitch-black sky like a porcelain that had exploded. Crack, crack, crack. In the next moment, more cracks appeared, spreading like a spider's web, rapidly spreading in the sky above. Those sharp swords that were attacking down suddenly stopped in midair when they reached Du Xiaofu's side. They let out mournful cries, and tiny cracks appeared on the bodies of the swords. Then, in a series of bangs, the sky and the countless sharp sword gleams shattered together, turning into countless tiny fragments. Unparalleled energy swept out, vast and mighty in all directions. Large amounts of energy runes were dense, roaring and boiling, sweeping across the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Black holes were pierced through the space, and the boundless energy surged wildly, forming a huge vortex that swallowed all existence. Under the vast suction force, the space shattered piece by piece and was sucked into the vortex. Du Xiaofu's figure was also drowned. In the violent surge of energy, his figure disappeared and was covered by the energy waves that filled the sky, leaving only the endless runes flashing. In an instant, when Yiming, Fan Yushu, and the others all rapidly retreated, using their fastest speed to leave this place, retreating to an extremely far place. Such a terrifying scene made none of them dare to be careless. In such a violent wave of energy, if one was not careful, even a truth-severing realm expert like Wen Yiming would be severely injured, and a god-seizing realm expert could be instantly killed. That Du Xiaofu is really too terrifying. That sword gleam just now, I'm afraid it's not much weaker than the Divine Wilderness Heavenlock Formation's power. He should be dead, killed by the countless sword gleams. There's no way he could have survived. It's good that he's dead. We've finally gotten rid of a big enemy. After everyone retreating, they were all discussing at Lin Yun's. When Yiming's followers, especially, they all heaved a long sigh of relief. Du Xiaofu's strength. Among the Yuqing Kingdom's younger generation, there was no one among the younger generation realm expert of Yu's is his Death realm expert. However, everyone deeply felt that the sound was that terrifying energy tide, and it was enough to crush a truth-severing stage elite into nothingness, dying until not even dregs were left. Even if that kid's talent was extraordinary, it was absolutely impossible for him to survive. How dare you spoil the plans of our divine general's estate? Death is not to be regretted. When Yiming frowned and said coldly as he looked at the dense and boiling energy wave. When he thought about how that kid called Du Xiaofu was a powerful existence who had killed Dai Xuanjun, Zhong Su, Wang Qishuan, and the others, he thought about how he had died at his own hands. To him, and even the entire Divine General's estate, this was definitely a great contribution that could not be erased. That guy's death could be said to have removed the biggest obstacle in the chaotic space. As long as everything went smoothly, when they left the chaotic space, he and the Divine General's estate behind him would receive unimaginable benefits, making the other 6 Divine Generals' estate envious. Brother Du. On the other side, Fan Yushu was stunned on the spot, his expression dim, and he had yet to recover from his shock. He had not known Du Xiaofu for long, so he did not feel much grief. However, because such a powerful expert had passed away, he felt extremely regretful. One had to know that such an outstanding youth had probably reached a level that no one could compare to among the young experts of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom. As one of the strongest young experts in the Divine Kingdom, when Yiming could only be crushed by him. But now, he had died under the peerless might of the divine wilderness heavenlock array. This was an incomparably pitiful matter. In the upcoming battle for the supreme Changrong heaven, there would probably be such an existence who would have the opportunity to shine brightly in the Yuqing divine kingdom. Young Master One, I'll go and see if that kid's body is still there. Just as everyone was having their own thoughts, one of Wen Yiming's subordinates stepped forward and said to him. Wen Yiming nodded slightly in agreement. After this subordinate received permission, his full cultivation of the seizing divinity realm erupted. He stretched out his hand and drew a line in the air. A powerful force surged out from his fingertip, piercing through the air and creating a huge black hole. He stepped into the void and walked into the black hole. In the next instant, his figure had already appeared in the distance. There was a huge amount of energy shockwave that was extremely terrifying. This subordinate's clothes fluttered in the wind, and a strong golden light covered his body. It made him look otherworldly and indescribably elegant, like a deity. You waited until the battle was over to show off your power. Why didn't I see you showing off earlier? When Fan Yushu saw this scene, he could not help but snort and say with disdain. In his eyes, that person's actions were definitely awe-inspiring, displaying an otherworldly aura to set off his mighty image. However, Fatty could only grumble in his heart and did not dare to say it out loud. At this moment, when Yiming and his subordinates were not far away and could attack him at any time, Du Xiaofu was dead, and his next encounter would definitely be extremely miserable. He even felt some sorrow in his heart, deeply saddened by the fate he was about to face. Fan Yushu did not say anything. He only glanced at Wen Yiming's subordinate who had attacked. He wanted to see if he could still see the purple-robed youth's corpse when he pushed aside the violent energy waves. However, under his gaze, Fan Yushu's eyes suddenly widened after the person in the distance made his move. It was as if he had seen a ghost, and his pupils were filled with fear. Brother Du is actually not dead, Fan Yushu muttered, extremely shocked. In his line of sight, after the energy runes that filled the sky were pushed aside, a purple-robed figure appeared in an instant. At this moment, he was still standing in the air, unmoving, overbearing, and awe-inspiring. This scene made Fatty unable to believe it no matter how hard he tried. Not only him, but Wen Yiming and his subordinates were even more shocked. How is this possible? My eyes aren't playing tricks on me, right? How can he still be alive? This is simply impossible. Under that terrifying energy attack, an ordinary true Severing Realm cultivator definitely wouldn't be able to survive. This kid is too strange. He actually didn't die like that. It's too scary. It's too scary. Is he still human? No one dared to believe their own eyes. Everything in front of them seemed so unreal. It was too unreal. This is impossible. The veins on Wen Yiming's forehead throbbed violently. As if he was possessed, he could not help but tremble as he spoke. Du Xiaofu's sword strike just now was absolutely tyrannical, but the sword rain that came from the divine desolate heavenlock array was also extremely terrifying. When the two collided, the energy fluctuations that erupted were enough to exterminate countless existences in the world. At the very least, when Wen Yiming himself faced the boiling energy waves, he could not help but feel his heart palpitate. But at this moment, when his subordinate pushed aside the violent waves that filled the sky, the purple-robed youth had appeared in front of him. How could anyone believe that this was real? Do you really think I'm that easy to kill? Du Xiaofu stood in midair, unmoving. A sinister sentence came out from between his teeth. His robes had long been shattered, turning into powder. At this moment, what covered his body was a green spirit armor that flickered with a misty green light. Die! Du Xiaofu's mouth once again burst out with this word. His hair was messy, and his eyes were fierce. With a wave of his hand, he struck out a powerful bolt of lightning. It was like a pillar that reached the heavens, brazenly sweeping out. Not far in front of him, Wen Yiming's subordinate was also in a state of boundless shock. Because Du Xiaofu was not dead, he was stunned. When such a terrifying bolt of lightning approached him, he had just reacted. He surged with all his strength, wanting to resist it head-on. However, it was all too late. Under the terrifying might of the lightning, this expert of the seizing god realm was directly blasted into a cloud of blood mist. He couldn't be more dead. Not even a speck was left. Ugh! After doing all this, Du Xiaofu's throat churned, and a gush of blood surged up. However, he forcefully swallowed it down. In the midst of that terrifying energy fluctuation, the space was directly messed up, and he couldn't even use the first form of Fu Yao. He could only use the absolute hegemony domain to defend himself. In addition to the protection of the green spirit armor, he was finally able to resist it. However, his body was also greatly shaken. His physical body was not seriously injured, but there were many tears. However, with the existence of the immortal Xin body, these injuries were nothing to him. The most important thing was that the primordial spirit was shaken, causing Du Xiaofu's mind to sway, and his head to feel some pain. Sixth Prince, Little Princess, and Brother Jibai, come out? Du Xiaofu shook his head and said softly. Immediately, the ancient desolate space opened, and Yu Chengyu, Yu Chengliang, and He Jibai flew out one by one. Brother Du, you're injured. Yu Chengliang was the first to discover Du Xiaofu's condition, and couldn't help but ask worriedly. He Jibai and Yu Chengyu also looked at him, revealing a look of concern. I'm fine. Just a small injury. Du Xiaofu casually skimmed over it, and then pointed to Wen Yiming and the rest in the distance, saying, Didn't we already say that we were going to cause trouble? Right now, this is the center of the divine, desolate heaven-lock formation. You should know the people over there. From now on, let's go all out and uncover these people's conspiracy. Let's put them under the sun and properly bask in the sun. He was really a little angry. Although he said it casually, he had indeed suffered a lot of injuries. He also began to treat the 7 great divine generals' residences seriously from the bottom of his heart. When Yiming, the people of the Tsangluan divine generals' residence, actually participated in the rebellion. Looking at the young man in the cloak opposite him, He Jibai's eyes narrowed as he gritted his teeth and said, Earlier, Du Xiaofu already knew all this from Tantai Rui's memories. However, seeing the people of the Tsangluan divine general's residence now, He Jibai couldn't help but feel angry. When Yiming, when your Tsangluan divine general's residence did these things, you must have already made a certain amount of mental preparation to face failure. Therefore, this prince won't waste any more words with you. Prepare to be beheaded. Yu Chengliang said softly as he looked at Wen Yiming. Heh, I was wondering who it was. So it's His Highness the 6th Prince and Her Highness the Little Princess. Oh, and young Master He from the Zihong Divine General's residence. So you've been following this kid and hiding in his spatial treasure. When Yiming recovered from his shock and sneered at the 3 people who suddenly appeared. If you want me to be beheaded, not to mention useless trash like you, even you, Yu Chengxi, Yu Chenggu, Yu Chengqi, and the rest can't even protect yourselves. And what right do you have to hoot in front of me? 3rd brother, 4th brother, 5th brother. Yu Chengyu's beautiful eyes flickered as she hurriedly asked, When Yiming, what did you do to them? Yu Chengxi, Yu Chenggu, and Yu Chengqi were the 6th prince and the little princess's 3rd brother, 4th brother, and 5th brother. They were also the experts sent by the imperial family to the chaos space to train. The 3 of them were extremely strong. The weakest, the 5th prince, Yu Chengqi, was not weaker than Dai Xuanzhen's cultivation. You can't even protect your own lives now. Do you still want to save them? When Yiming sneered as he looked at the little princess, he could see that Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, and He Jibai were still in the seizing god realm. They hadn't even reached the perfect realm, not to mention the divine desolate heaven lock array. Even in the outside world, he could easily crush these 3 pieces of trash. You seem to have forgotten my existence. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's light voice sounded out. When it entered Wen Yiming's ears, he was stunned once again. But in just a moment, he recovered and couldn't help but sneer again. With just you. Maybe I'm not as good as you in a head-on fight, but don't think that I can't see that you're already injured. I'm still in my prime, and can control the divine wilderness heaven lock formation. How many more times do you think you can withstand the full force of the formation? His smile was ice cold as he stared at Du Xiaofu. Just as he said, He controlled the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation, and Du Xiaofu was bound to be heavily injured every time he faced it. After a few more times, there would be a time when he would be defeated. No matter what, when Yiming only felt that he had the absolute advantage at this moment. As long as he didn't fight the purple-robed youth head-on, he would be in an invincible position. Is that so? Du Xiaofu was expressionless as he said coldly. Then let's continue to try. Let's see which one of you can leave here alive today. This is also good. Dai Xuanjin and the rest of the trash couldn't capture you. Since you actually jumped out and appeared here, then I'll settle you all together today. When Yiming shouted, his voice and expression stern. As he spoke, a ball of bright light shot out from his forehead, so bright that the surrounding subordinates couldn't open their eyes. A powerful aura rose, and waves of primordial spirit power surged like waves, rushing into the compass in his hand. Clang, clang, clang. The compass shook violently, emitting a metallic sound. It once again emitted a resplendent light, like a scorching sun. A powerless power shot out, piercing through the void. The entire space began to shake violently under the influence of this power. A terrifying power was brewing and condensing, rapidly rising and steaming, as if it wanted to crush this area into pieces. Facing Wen Yiming's action, Du Xiaofu didn't speak. A ray of divine light shot out from his eyes. Suddenly, he looked at Fan Yushu and said, "Damn fatty, why aren't you coming over? Are you standing there waiting to be slaughtered?" Oh, Fan Yushu quivered and immediately reacted. His fat body was extremely agile. In a flash, he appeared directly beside Du Xiaofu. However, until now, he was still a little confused and didn't know what was going on. The sixth prince, the little princess, and young Master He from the divine general Zihong's mansion. The three of them had come with Du Xiaofu. As one of the 10 divine generals' manners under the Yuqing divine kingdom, Wen Yiming, who came from the Congluan divine general's mansion, was actually an enemy of the prince and the princess. This made the fatty unable to figure out what was going on. He was confused. Wasn't it tantamount to treason for the divine general's mansion's disciples to attack the prince and the princess? Moreover, according to Wen Yiming's words, they didn't just want to make things difficult for the sixth prince and the little princess. Even the other 3 princes seemed to have fallen into their trap. That wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that the other divine general's manners seemed to be involved as well. Apart from the Congluan divine general's mansion, Dai Xuanjin, Zhong Su, and Wang Qishuan were all familiar to Fan Yushu. They were all disciples of the 10 divine general's manners. What kind of upheaval were they brewing? It's scary to think about it. Our divine black sect isn't weak, but we definitely can't handle these behemoths. The fatty calculated in his mind, weighing the pros and cons. He wondered if he should leave as soon as possible and not get involved in this mess. However, on second thought, he was all alone. It would be almost impossible for him to leave this formation. If he relied on the protection of the Du Xiaofu brothers, he might have a chance. Or should he join Wen Yiming's side? The fatty couldn't help but shudder at this thought. He didn't even dare to think about going against the imperial family. Chapter 2744. Fan Yushu was in a dilemma. The divine black sect wasn't considered weak among the countless forces in the Yuqing divine kingdom, but it was nothing compared to the divine kingdom's imperial family and the 10 divine generals' residences. If he rashly participated in the battle of these people, the result would be either a meteoric rise or the destruction of his sect. It was better to stay out of it. However, he didn't have time to think too much. He heard Wen Yiming shout, "Divine Baron Heavenlock, slay gods and demons." The compass in his hand flew into the air and emitted endless light. It was like a sun hanging in the middle of the sky. Imperceptibly, invisible runes were spreading out, affecting all existences in the surrounding space and affecting the order of the laws here. Following that, a terrifying pressure descended and landed on everyone present. In an instant, space began to twist and distort. Huge chunks of space began to move, moving like mountains. With an unparalleled pressure, they pressed down on Du Xiaofu's group from all directions. Every single one of those giant spatial blocks carried a heaven-dominating, earth-shattering power that could suppress everything. As soon as it moved, it crushed the surrounding void into pieces and sprinkled them down. Yu Chungliang, Yu Chungyu, He Jibai, Fan Yushu, and the others were all stunned. This scene was too terrifying. They couldn't resist at all. Everyone's Xian Qi was suppressed to the point that they couldn't circulate it. Even breathing became incomparably difficult. The killing array of the divine barren heaven-lock formation really can't be underestimated. Du Xiaofu thought to himself as he watched all these changes. Elder Kong had once told him that the divine barren heaven-lock formation once enveloped the entire 33 heavens in ancient times, trapping and killing countless demon armies. It was truly powerful and domineering. Right now, when Yiming could barely activate it, but this power was enough to shock the world. At the very least, there weren't many people in the primal chaos space who could withstand it. On the other hand, Du Xiaofu had grasped one of the 4 primordial laws, the laws of space. So, with its uniqueness, he was able to slightly resist it. Since it's not the real divine wilderness heaven-lock array, and it's not even a millionth of the one from back then there must be a corresponding way to break it. It's just an imitation, so it's definitely not unsolvable. Du Xiaofu thought in his heart. Facing Wen Yiming's attack, not only did he not react in time, but he also silently closed his eyes and carefully sensed with his heart. His actions were seen by Wen Yiming's followers, and they couldn't help but feel astonished. What is this brat doing? Not only did he not fight back, he even closed his eyes. I'm afraid that after seeing the might of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation, he was scared silly. Kiki. He should be an arrow at the end of its flight and doesn't have the strength to fight anymore. No matter what he's trying to do, he won't be able to escape death under young Master Wen's attack. Many people spoke coldly as they looked at the purple-robed figure in the distance, as if they were looking at a dead person. The 6th prince, He Jibai, and the others beside Du Xiaofu also had worried expressions. They also did not know what Du Xiaofu was doing. Why did he suddenly close his eyes, as if he did not have any intention of directly facing the enemy? If he just stood there without moving, the only result would be that he would be crushed into a pile of minced meat. As for the few of them, they would also not be able to escape the fate of death. Du Xiaofu had released them from the ancient desolate space, so it was impossible for him to send them to their deaths. Seeing that the suppression of the giant spatial block was getting closer and closer, the few of them began to panic. Under that incomparably terrifying power, they couldn't even protect themselves. The key to this imitation of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation should be on that compass. If I want to break it, I can try to start from there. As Du Xiaofu pondered, the power of his primordial spirit spread out like a surging tide. At the same time, the law imprint in his mind lit up. Following the trajectory of the power of his primordial spirit, he felt for the traces of order within the space of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation. In his perception, he could vaguely sense that there were Tao runes circulating in the compass. They filled the void and resonated with some of the elements in this space. This result allowed Du Xiaofu to finally confirm his speculation. Do it. Just as he sensed all of this, Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly opened. 2 beams of light shot out, as if they were solid, piercing through the void. He could sense that under the pressure of the giant spatial block, the void was about to be sealed. If he was a step late, he would be in the same situation as before and fall into an extremely passive situation. Du Xiaofu no longer acted gentle. He immediately moved and used the Fuyao style. The purple-robed figure suddenly disappeared from the spot, as if he had disappeared into thin air. Brother Du. This scene caused He Jibai and the others to be greatly shocked. They were not shocked by Du Xiaofu's methods, but by the giant spatial blocks that were about to land on top of their heads. The vast and mighty power was just a simple suppression. Before it could reach their bodies, it caused their bodies to silently split open. Blood spurted out like a fountain. In an instant, the 4 of them were already seriously injured. Scarlet blood gushed out from the corners of their mouths. Du Xiaofu, go to hell. In the distance, Wen Yiming laughed sinisterly. He was incomparably carefree. He originally thought that he would need to use more methods to suppress the brat, But he did not expect that the other party would directly give up resisting and stand there in a daze. To Wen Yiming, this was simply the most delightful thing to see. However, not long after, he suddenly lost the figure of the purple-robed youth. This made his heart skip a beat, and he felt that something was wrong. He seemed to have thought of something and suddenly raised his head to look at the position in the sky. At the same time, Wen Yiming's figure flew out and rushed toward the compass that was shining brightly above his head. However, when he started to make these movements, everything was already too late. At this time, the purple-robed youth was already standing in midair. He stretched out his palm and transformed it into an extremely large handprint. It was suffused with a purple-gold light and was about to seize the compass. Such a handprint was extremely terrifying. It had lightning revolving, raging fire, and space evolving. Several types of power of law intertwined, fluctuating with a terrifying power that swept toward the compass. Woo woo woo, under the influence of the external force, the compass began to vibrate violently and let out a terrifying trembling sound. Brat, how dare you? Wen Yiming was shocked and quickly attacked. The power in his body surged as he used all his strength to control the rotation of the compass. He wanted to get rid of Du Xiaofu's entanglement. Waves of powerful energy were activated. An invisible, mysterious force circulated and stirred up the void. In the distance, the huge space blocks immediately moved horizontally again and suppressed in the direction of the compass. Following that, the pressure on Yu Chengliang, He Zhibai, and the other two was greatly reduced. They immediately regained their freedom, but each of them was severely injured and collapsed to the ground. You overestimate yourself. Is the mysterious heaven compass something that you can covet? Wen Yiming shouted, almost roaring. Seeing Du Xiaofu attack the compass in midair, his eyes were filled with intense hatred. The mysterious heaven compass was the key to controlling the divine wilderness heaven lock formation. There were only 4 similar items. As for the people from the 7 divine generals' residences, they only had 2. If Du Xiaofu took it, it would definitely lead to severe punishment from the big shots behind them. He would never allow such a thing to happen. As he spoke, Wen Yiming mobilized the power in his body and controlled the compass to rotate rapidly. The huge space blocks moved horizontally and attacked Du Xiaofu. Break for me. These words came out of Du Xiaofu's mouth. As he waved his huge palm of light, his other hand suddenly stretched out. 9 purplish gold flowing lights flew out from his body, carrying a terrifying aura. They pierced through the void, leaving 9 pitch-black marks. Rumble. These were 9 purple lightning profound cauldrons. Once they appeared, they caused the wind and clouds to change. Lightning poured down from the sky and boiled in the void. The 9 cauldrons carried an unparalleled power and brazenly struck in all directions, smashing down on the huge space blocks. Boom, 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 boom. The 9 cauldrons suppressed the world, absolutely domineering. Amidst the terrifying rumbling sounds, the giant void blocks were crushed into powder. The 9 cauldrons drew 9 trajectories and shuttled back and forth in the void, destroying everything in their path. They crushed everything and forcibly suppressed the huge space blocks. Get lost. High up in the sky, Du Xiaofu shouted in a deep voice. The sound wave was vast and shattered the 9 heavens. It was unknown when the purple-gold heavenly tower was in his hand again. He slashed down fiercely, and a bright sword light formed. It was as if it could pierce through the heavens and the earth, slashing fiercely in Wen Yiming's direction. Faced with such a sword, Wen Yiming leaped into the air and formed a huge wind blade with a flip of his hand. It collided with Du Xiaofu's sword light. Following a terrifying rumbling sound, the 2 waves of power shattered upon contact, turning into symbols that covered the sky as they leapt about. Taking advantage of this gap, Du Xiaofu circulated the power in his body even more. All of it was channeled into the huge palm of light, seizing the entire compass. In the midst of this, the invisible law trajectories on the compass were forcefully broken, and it lost contact with Wen Yiming. Such a scene caused Wen Yiming's heart to tremble fiercely. In an instant, his face turned ashen. How could this be? Wen Yiming muttered. feeling extremely incredulous. The mysterious heavenly compass was one of the 4 compasses that controlled the divine, desolate heaven-lock formation. If it really fell into Du Xiaofu's hands, he would no longer have any advantage. He could only be suppressed and ruthlessly trampled on by his opponent. Most importantly, the divine desolate heaven-lock formation did not belong to the 7 divine generals' residences. If it was lost, not only would the divine general residence of Tsang Luan receive great credit, just the loss of the compass was enough to consign them to eternal damnation. Humph! Du Xiaofu coldly snorted. Under the guidance of the palm of light, the shining compass flew to his side. However, he quickly discovered that the compass did not only have the power of Wen Yiming's primordial spirit, but also an even more powerful force that played a dominant role in it. Therefore, even if he had the compass in his hand, he could not use it to control the divine desolate heaven-lock formation. Without any hesitation, Du Xiaofu threw the mysterious heavenly compass into his Qinkuan bag and looked at Wen Yiming in the blink of an eye. Is that compass the item that controls this formation? It was actually obtained by Brother Du. Brother Du is too strong. Even Wen Yiming is not a match for him. Even if he can control the divine desolate heaven-lock formation, he is still suppressed by him. This is great. Without the compass in his hand, Wen Yiming is no longer a threat. Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, He Zhibai, and Fan Yushu all heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this. They knew that with Du Xiaofu's strength, without the restraint of the divine desolate heaven-lock formation, Wen Yiming would definitely not be his match. This made the 4 of them extremely happy. In contrast to their emotions, Wen Yiming's subordinates all had ugly expressions. They were deeply fearful of the purple-robed youth's strength. Du Xiaofu, quickly return the mysterious heavenly compass to me. Otherwise, you'll suffer a fate worse than death. At this moment, Wen Yiming's eyes were red as he roared sternly at Du Xiaofu. The colossus behind the 7 divine generals' estates was not something their divine generals' estates could afford to offend. Similarly, they could not afford to offend this purple-robed youth in front of them. If he insisted on seizing the mysterious heavenly compass, his final outcome would definitely be 10,000 times more miserable than falling into the hands of the 7 divine generals' estates. However, his words carried the strongest threat in Du Xiaofu's ears. At this time, you don't want to run for your life. Instead, you are threatening me. I wonder if your head has been squeezed by a door or kicked by a donkey. Du Xiaofu spoke coldly as he stared at Wen Yiming as if he was looking at an idiot. As soon as these words were spoken, Wen Yiming felt as if he had awoken from a dream. Only then did he realize that if he did not run for his life, with the purple-robed youth's strength, he would not be a match for him at all. Wen Yiming's mind raced. In the blink of an eye, he had weighed the pros and cons. Then, without saying a word, he quickly retreated. The power of the wind attribute laws surged, and in an instant, he pulled an extremely far distance away from Du Xiaofu. At the same time, the power of his primordial spirit was released nervously, constantly judging the purple-robed youth's movements. The other party's space-jumping technique was too mysterious, so he had no choice but to treat it seriously. Want to escape? Don't you think it's too late? Du Xiaofu said softly. With a flash of golden light, he disappeared from his original spot. Chapter 2745. But this time, Wen Yiming was already prepared. His mind had always been tightly tied to Du Xiaofu's body. In the instant that the other party disappeared, he unleashed boundless wind blades that surrounded his body, wrapping him within. Just as he had expected, in the next moment, a sword ray shot out from the void. However, under the obstruction of the wind blades, the sword ray was quickly extinguished and did not cause any harm to Wen Yiming. If I really want to leave, you can't stop me, Wen Yiming said in a gloomy voice. As he spoke, his figure shot out and quickly escaped into the distance. He knew that if he was a step slower, Du Xiaofu's space domain would descend again. If he was really entangled by that terrifying space law, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens to escape. I really can't stop you? Then I want to see where you can escape to. I dare say that even if you escape to the ends of the earth, You won't be able to get rid of me, Du Xiaofu said lightly and chased after him once again. He was not in a hurry to kill Wen Yiming, so he did not use his full strength. Instead, he constantly restricted his movements, causing his speed to greatly decrease. Most importantly, he knew that Wen Yiming's cultivation was also at the true severing realm. Under the circumstances where the other party was prepared, even though he had the upper hand, he was unable to quickly kill him. Du Xiaofu was only thinking that his goal in coming to the Divine Wilderness Heavenlock Formation was to investigate the 7 great divine generals' estates. Furthermore, the other 3 princes and the rest might also be here. When Yiming was escaping, he would definitely seek help from his companions. In this way, Du Xiaofu's goal would naturally be achieved. The 2 of them, one chasing and one escaping, disappeared into the distance in an instant. Quickly follow Brother Du. In the distance, Yu Chengliang shouted. Without any delay, he brought Yu Chengyu, He Jibai, and Fan Yushu along as they quickly chased after Du Xiaofu and Fan Yushu. Within the inner space of the Divine Wilderness Heavenlock Formation, their seizing divinity cultivation was not enough. If they lost Du Xiaofu's protection, it would be difficult for them to do anything. If he were to meet the people from the 7 divine generals' manors again, then there would be no way for him to survive. The best outcome would be being captured alive. What should we do? On the other side, when Yiming's subordinates looked at each other, their young Master Wan was no match for his opponent and had even lost the extremely important profound heaven compass. Now that he had abandoned everyone and left, they really didn't know what to do. Follow him and find an opportunity to inform the others. We must capture that brat and take back the profound heavenly compass. Otherwise, if the higher-ups blame us, not to mention us, even young Master Wan and the divine General Tsang Yan's estate behind him will have to bear the consequences. Not long after, another expert spoke up. When the others heard this, they all nodded and immediately followed him. Du Xiaofu, I will definitely make you die without a burial place. When Yiming clenched his teeth tightly and said hatefully, he quickly fled, but under the suppression of the purple-robed youth, he couldn't unleash his maximum speed. Therefore, his subordinates, Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, He Jibai, Fan Yushu, and many other seizing divinity cultivators, could barely keep up with their footsteps. In the space of the Divine Wilderness Heavenlock Formation, there were already many experts from the outside world gathered. Those who could enter here were at least at the seizing divinity realm. However, after most people entered, they were all lost in it. They didn't have a powerful primordial spirit and strength like Du Xiaofu, who could see through all the illusions around them. However, after Du Xiaofu entered, everyone else entered at the same time. They knew that they had fallen into a huge trap set up by some experts and were trapped in the formation. Therefore, these people gathered together in an organized manner, wanting to wade in the muddy water here. However, when they truly entered, they were filled with great fear. They could not find their way forward at all. In desperation, many people could only wander around aimlessly, but slowly, some people gradually lost their patience. What kind of existence is this? What kind of formation is this? Why don't we have any clue? This place is too strange. It's a vast mist, and the power of the primordial spirit can only spread out to a range of dozens of miles. To us, what's the difference between this and being blind? I really don't know who set up this formation and spread the news of the Chaos Dao artifact to attract countless experts. What is their purpose? Many people were puzzled and didn't know what kind of situation they were facing. However, everyone wanted to know the truth and understand what kind of scam they were in. The news of the appearance of a Chaos Dao artifact had attracted them here. What kind of conspiracy was brewing behind this? If the person who set up the formation appears, we will definitely have a good fight with him. Someone gritted his teeth, his eyes revealing a fierce light as he spoke hatefully. It has to be like this. Everyone has been fooled and trapped in such a strange place. There were also people who cursed angrily. However, they also knew that even if they didn't enter this place, there was no way out in the canyon. Those people who set up the formation still haven't appeared. They must have a purpose for trapping us here. At this time, Another person spoke calmly as if he was seriously thinking about something. However, no matter how he guessed, he couldn't see through the thoughts of the person who set up the formation. There's someone in the sky. Suddenly, an expert's eyes lit up and he said excitedly. When the others heard this, they also looked up. In the sky, there were two groups of figures, one in front and one behind, moving quickly. There were only two people in the front group, and it seemed that one was chasing and the other was fleeing. From time to time, there would be terrifying energy attacks surging, sweeping through heaven and earth, and behind them, another group of figures appeared, following closely behind the two people in front. What terrifying attacks! Could it be that the cultivation of those two people are in the truth-severing stage? This is too terrifying. That kind of strength can't be possessed by the God-seizing stage. The two people in front must be in the truth-severing stage without a doubt. The two groups behind seem to be in the God-seizing stage. To be able to break through to the truth-severing stage so quickly, they should be people from the imperial family and the 10 great divine generals' residences. But why are they hostile and fighting each other? Could it be that there are other experts who have broken through to the truth-severing stage? When these experts saw the scene in the sky, they all spoke out, extremely shocked by the strength of the two people in front of them. At this time, the truth-severing stage in the origin space was definitely a breakthrough after entering the origin space. Other than those few famous people, they couldn't think of any other existence. And if the two people in the lead were from the imperial family and the 10 great divine generals' residences, then why were they facing off against each other? These experts were confused, not understanding the reason, but doubts were doubts. Finally seeing a large group of figures, these people didn't even think, directly moving into the air, flying up and following closely behind. As the crowd flew, someone suddenly cried out in surprise, pointing to the sky, and said, "Look at that purple-robed youth in front. Isn't that the person in the depths of the canyon?" "That's right, it's him." At the side, an expert spoke with certainty. "Among the two groups of people behind us, that fat guy is with that purple-robed young man." They quickly recognized the identities of Du Xiaofu and Fan Yushu. These two people were walking together in the canyon, and they had all seen them before. Most importantly, there was a large formation here, and it was also the purple-robed young man who saw through it first. Everyone remembered his appearance very clearly, and that damn fat guy. His appearance was too outstanding. After seeing it once, it was hard to forget even if one wanted to. "Quick, let's go faster, follow them. We must not fall behind." Many experts suddenly had a feeling of excitement, as if they had found a group. Each of them unleashed their maximum speed, quickly following behind the two groups in front, afraid that if they were half a beat slower, they would lose their target. That purple-robed youth is actually at the truth-severing stage. He was the first to discover the strangeness of this place, and at this time, he is chasing after that cloaked guy in front. Could it be that this large formation was set up by him? Some of these experts were quite calm, but in a short time, they made some guesses, inferring the identity of the person that the purple-robed youth was chasing. Very likely. Everyone nodded, expressing their agreement with this guess. Someone is following us. Du Xiaofu also saw the situation behind. With his strength, he naturally spied on everything clearly. Seeing such a scene, an idea suddenly rose in his heart. Maybe I can give it a try. Du Xiaofu's mouth curled into a smile as he muttered to himself. Then his figure disappeared, and the first style of Fuyao was activated again. He appeared on the path that Wen Yiming was on, and a resplendent pillar of lightning blasted out, directly attacking him. Such an attack blocked the other party's movements for a moment, so that even though He Jibai, Fan Yushu, and the others behind were exhausted, they still had enough time to barely catch up. "Brat, just wait to be beheaded. I will definitely make you die without a burial place, and the Xintian compass that you took will return to my hands." When Yiming roared hatefully, opening his mouth to shout. He knew very well that although the Xintian compass was extremely important to him, it was useless in Du Xiaofu's hands. It contained an extremely tyrannical primordial spirit power, and it was not something that ordinary people could refine. Therefore, even if Du Xiaofu took away the Xintian compass, Wen Yiming was not too worried, because the other party could not use it to control the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation. Chapter 2746. Du Xiaofu stopped when Yiming for a moment, allowing the people behind him to take the opportunity to catch up. Then, he used the power of his primordial spirit to cover a large area. Other than the people behind him, there were also many people trapped in the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation. Then, he exploded again and chased after Wen Yiming. Don't do anything useless. I'm focused on defense. You can't kill me, Wen Yiming said coldly with a gloomy face. With his strength, if he wanted to avoid Du Xiaofu and focus on defense, Du Xiaofu wouldn't be able to do anything to him. However, Du Xiaofu didn't want to kill him immediately. He chased after Wen Yiming and kept circling around him. This action caused many experts below to notice the two figures, which attracted the attention of many people. The person who set up the formation is here. Everyone, attack together and kill them. A trace of a cold smile appeared on the corners of Du Xiaofu's mouth. Suddenly, he shouted loudly, and his voice spread through the 9 heavens, causing many people in the surroundings to hear him. Once these words were said, a commotion broke out in the space of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation. Have you found the person who set up the formation? I really want to see who set up this great formation to actually trap everyone here. Everyone, attack together and find him. Let's see what kind of conspiracy is brewing behind them. Let's go. Let's see who these people are. They dare to make all the forces in the Yuqing Divine Kingdom their enemy. Countless experts shouted as they chased after the two figures in the sky. Soon, not far behind Du Xiaofu, a large group of people gathered together with He Zhibai, Yu Qingliang, and the others. They followed behind Du Xiaofu from afar. On the other hand, the faces of Wen Yiming's subordinates turned extremely ugly. Every one of them felt a little frightened. With such a large group of seizing divinity realm experts, as long as they didn't encounter a true severing realm expert, they could sweep through the origin space. This is bad. Our plan was messed up by Du Xiaofu. Someone among Wen Yiming's subordinates muttered. They attracted so many experts into the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation. Their initial goal wasn't to let them gather together to deal with the 7 divine generals' residences. Now, with Du Xiaofu's interference, everything was out of control. If those people turn around to deal with us, I'm afraid that we won't be able to. We can't even withstand a single round of attacks. Another person said in a panic, his voice filled with extreme fear. But those people didn't seem to take them, and they were following Du Xiaofu and Young Master Wan. Young Master Wan and Young Master Wan. The most important thing was that He Zhibai, Yu Qingliang, and the other 3 didn't even turn around to look at them. This allowed Wen Yiming's subordinates to heave a sigh of relief. Du Xiaofu, what do you want? Countless experts gathered, causing Wen Yiming to be on guard. What do I want? Don't you have any idea? Du Xiaofu snorted lightly and executed the Fuyao style consecutively. He charged towards Wen Yiming and said, You 7 divine generals' manners have been plotting for a long time. It's time to bring all your schemes under the sun and bask them in the sun. He slashed down with his sword, forcing Wen Yiming to retreat with all his might. Then, Du Xiaofu turned his gaze and saw that there were already more than 1,000 people following behind him. They were coming in a grandiose manner. It's about time, Du Xiaofu thought to himself. He didn't chase after Wen Yiming closely. Instead, he opened up enough space for him to escape. However, in consideration of the speed of the experts behind him, he still chased after him from time to intercept him. It was under such circumstances that Du Xiaofu followed closely behind Wen Yiming, forcing him into a difficult situation. Just as Du Xiaofu had expected, Wen Yiming's purpose of escaping was to find his companions so that they could join forces to deal with Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu, you really dared to chase after me. You're simply seeking your own death. Wen Yiming sneered and looked back at Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu didn't reply and followed closely behind him. The two of them had their own thoughts. Wen Yiming hoped that his companions would join forces to take down the young man who had ruined their plans. Du Xiaofu wanted to follow behind Wen Yiming and find the other people from the 7 divine generals' residences. Under such circumstances, the two of them, one chasing and one escaping, were followed by a large group of figures. Finally, Not long after, the group arrived at an illusory area. Here, the mountains and rivers had all disappeared. The layers of mist had also completely disappeared. There was only a boundless void and a strange light that flowed endlessly. It gave off an indescribable dreamlike feeling. When Yiming didn't even think and directly entered such a place. After Du Xiaofu stepped in, he felt an extremely powerful energy fluctuation. The colorful light surrounded the surroundings, as if it could transform into the most violent Tao of slaughter at any time. Du Xiaofu, you're dead today. When Yiming stopped running and stood in the void as he coldly looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "There's actually such an existence in the inner space of the divine wilderness heaven-lock array." Du Xiaofu still didn't answer when Yiming's words. Instead, he was observing everything. He saw that not far from Wen Yiming, there were many figures. There were at least 1,000 of them, and these people were all emitting a deep and vast aura that was difficult to measure. These people were roughly divided into 3 groups. One side was led by 2 youths, and there were hundreds of figures surrounding them. Du Xiaofu observed that these 2 youths were both at the true severing realm. He had even met one of them before, and it was the bare-chested brawny man that he had seen in the divine wilderness heaven-lock array when he had saved Yu Qingliang earlier. He was Helian Shang from the divine General Yin's estate. On the other side, there was a large number of people. They were divided into 4 groups and were not organized. The strongest among them was not even at the great circle of the God-seizing realm. These people should be the people from the various powers of the Yu Qing divine kingdom. Du Xiaofu quickly determined that the people in front were undoubtedly from the 7 great divine generals' estates, and the latter were from the various powers in the divine nations. They were attracted here by the news of the primal chaos Tao artifact. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, asterisk very quickly, after Du Xiaofu and Li Wuyo entered, He Zhibai, Yu Qingliang, Fan Yushu, and a large group of people who followed them here also followed. So the person who set up the array was hiding here. Who is it that wants to attack all the powers in the divine nations? Stand out. What audacity! Who dares to risk universal condemnation and make everyone their enemy? Who is it that has such ability? After these people arrived, they all shouted loudly, and their voices shook the sky. Yu Qingliang and Yu Qingyu looked around. When they saw a few figures bound by the 5-colored flowing light in the distance, they exclaimed, "Third brother, 4th brother, 5th brother." At the same time, He Zhibai also saw the figures and instantly blurted out, "Your Highnesses." That's right, there were a few people who were surrounded by Helian Shang and the others. Streaks of 5-colored light wrapped around their bodies like powerful shackles, making them unable to move at all. Wen Yiming, why did you come back? Among the crowd, Helian Shang from the divine general Enhe's mansion frowned when he saw so many people appear one after another. Hearing this, another young man at the truth severing realm also looked in the direction of Du Xiaofu and the others. "Helian, Yizong, I've met a tough nut." When Yiming looked at Du Xiaofu fiercely and said with gritted teeth, "Helian Shang, Tantai Ruchuan, how dare you? Let go of my 3 royal brothers, Brother Yoguang and Brother Yizong." The little princess stepped forward and shouted clearly, "Heh, so the 6th prince and the little princess are also here. We were worried about where to find you. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to us." Helian Shang didn't say anything. Instead, it was the young man at the truth severing realm beside him who laughed lightly and said, "This person looked somewhat similar to Tanai Ruwei. He was her younger brother, Tantai Ruchuan from the divine General Xian Zhan's mansion. Looks like you're determined to be enemies with the royal family. I'm afraid you've miscalculated. When the time comes, you won't even know how you died." Yu Qingliang knew that it was useless to say too much, so he only said this sentence. However, his words only caused Tantai Ruchuan to laugh loudly. He said, "What time is it now? You're still talking tough. Do you really think we're scared?" "6th prince, little princess, don't waste your energy talking nonsense with them. They won't cry until they see the coffin. They definitely won't stop easily." On the side, Du Xiaofu said lightly, "Who are you?" Tantai Ruchuan frowned and asked aloud, "I'm here to kill you." Du Xiaofu curled the corner of his mouth and said indifferently, "This kid is very strange. He seems to have just broken through to the true severing stage, but I'm no match for him at all. Dai Xuanjun, Wang Qishuan, and Zhong Su were also saved by him when they captured Yu Chengliang and Yu Chengyu. And now, the profound heaven compass has also fallen into his hands. When Yiming moved to Helian Shang and Tantai Ruchuan's side and said cautiously, "Only if the three of us join forces will we have a chance to take him down in one fell swoop." When Yiming's words caused Helian Shang and Tantai Ruchuan's gazes to harden fiercely, Helian Shang stepped forward and said, "It was him who killed Dai Xuanjun, Zhong Su, Wang Qishuan, and the others? They had attacked the sixth prince and little princess earlier. They had thought that under Dai Xuanjun's leadership, it would be a small matter as easy as flipping one's hand. However, they did not expect that in the end. Not only did those people fail to capture the two of them, they even lost their own lives in the end. This result caused Helian Shang, who had arrived later, to be extremely furious. He even stole the profound heaven compass?" Tantai Ruchuan turned his gaze towards Wen Yiming, and his eyes were filled with endless anger. This brat is too strong. Wen Yiming was a little frightened by Helian Shang's gaze and could only say such a sentence, "Well, since they have come here to die, then let's take care of them together." Helian Shang's eyes narrowed as he said in a deep voice. Around them, thousands of people listened to their conversation and finally understood what was going on. So the people who set up this great formation are from the Divine General's manors. Other than the Divine General Xianzhan's mansion, the Divine General Yinhe's mansion, and the Divine General Tsang Luan's mansion, it seems that the Divine General Taishu's mansion, the Divine General Yuan Ding's mansion, the Divine General Xian Huang's mansion, and the Divine General Nie Huang's mansion are also involved. They actually attacked the princes and princesses. What are they trying to do? The news of the Chaos Dao artifact should have been spread by them. What is their purpose in attracting us here? Everyone discussed and came to a conclusion. At the same time, it also raised more questions. Just as everyone was puzzled, Tantai Ruchuan from the Divine General Xianzhan's mansion suddenly shouted to the crowd, "Everyone is from the forces of the Divine Kingdom. This time, I will give you a chance to make a name for yourselves." Tantai Ruchuan's words instantly silenced the crowd. No one said anything. They only wanted to hear what he was going to say next. Du Xiaofu, Yu Chengliang, and the others did not say anything. They also wanted to know why the people from the seven Divine Generals' manors had lured everyone here. Tantai Ruchuan paused for a moment and continued to speak loudly. The seven Divine Generals' manors have joined forces not only to capture the princes and princesses, but also to control the Yuqing Divine Kingdom. If any of you are willing to follow us, when we flatten the Divine Kingdom, you will be rewarded. Once these words were spoken, the crowd instantly burst into an uproar. What? Did I hear wrongly? The seven Divine Generals' manors joined forces to deal with the princes and princesses for the sake of dealing with the imperial family. This is too hard to believe. Are they crazy? The imperial family, that's the imperial family. Where did these people get the guts to challenge the imperial family? So what if it's the seven Divine Generals' manors? How can they compete with a colossus like the imperial family? They are really crazy. If the Divine Emperor is angry, the seven Divine Generals' manors will be wiped out. Rebellion. This is treason. Countless people cried out, not daring to believe that what they had just heard was true. Everyone knew what the imperial family meant. With the Divine Emperor's deterrence, the seven Divine Generals' manors would not be able to do much. Where the hell did they get the guts to do such a crazy thing? But soon, many people slowly calmed down and began to carefully consider the key points here. No, since they dare to do this, they must be very confident. That's right. The seven Divine Generals are not fools. They will not destroy their own futures and throw away their lives. I just don't know what methods they have. Do they really dare to challenge the imperial family? Who has the strength to go against the Divine Emperor? Everyone began to speculate. One after another, they could not figure out the main point. Seeing this situation, Tantai Ruchuan only smiled and said, "The Divine Emperor has fallen. It's time to change the world." Hua! Tantai Ruchuan's words caused the entire place to become deathly silent. But soon, another huge uproar was set off. The scene immediately became even more chaotic. The divine emperor has fallen? How can this be? As the strongest existence in the divine kingdom, how can the divine emperor fall? If this news is true, then the imperial family is really in danger this time. I think this news is not fake. So it's like this. The divine emperor has fallen. No wonder. No wonder the 7 divine generals' manners dared to challenge the imperial family. Thousands of people were shocked. They were deeply shocked by this news. They finally understood where the 7 divine generals' manners' confidence came from. If the divine emperor had really fallen, then they really had the strength to fight against the imperial family. So, now is the time for you to make a choice. A wise man submits to circumstances. If you are willing to stand on the side of the 7 divine generals' manners, then we will naturally welcome you. But if you want to be a loyal and filial son, then I will fulfill your wish, Tantai Ruchuan said with a smile. But in the end, his words carried a thick, murderous intent. This murderous intent was not hidden at all. It permeated the void and drilled into everyone's primordial spirit, causing many God-seizing experts to be flustered. His eyes swept across the scene and observed everyone's expression. It was as if he would kill anyone who dared to shake their head. No one dared to speak. Very few people dared to look him in the eye. They all looked away and lowered their heads. This is forcing us to rebel. The people from the 7 divine generals' manners are too ruthless. Even if the divine emperor has fallen, the struggle between the imperial family and the 7 divine generals' manners is not something that we can get involved in. They are all monstrous existences. If we rashly get involved, then we might invite a fatal disaster. Everyone was calculating in their hearts, weighing the pros and cons and weighing the pros and cons. But they found that no one could get involved in this muddy water. Whether it was the imperial family or the 7 divine generals' manners, they were all extremely powerful existences. The only way was to sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight, staying out of it. I'm afraid it's not that simple. The 7 divine generals' manners have attracted everyone here for the purpose of making them make a choice. Whoever dares to go against them will die, even if they don't want to get involved. What they want is a group of obedient dogs, tying everyone to their chariot. Du Xiaofu's burning gaze swept across the surroundings, taking in everyone's expressions. Naturally, he could guess what they were thinking. At the same time, he could also understand that the 7 divine generals' manners had set up the divine wilderness Heavenlock formation and spread the news of the appearance of the Chaos Taoist artifact. Then, only God-seizing experts were allowed to enter this place. Their purpose was to settle everything here. If anyone dared to resist or wanted to watch the fire burn across the river, then they could all be killed in one fell swoop. Du Xiaofu was also a little worried. With the news of the fall of the divine emperor, although most people would hesitate, there would definitely be many who would be blinded by the great temptation and want to get involved. Chapter 2747. Just as Du Xiaofu was thinking about this, he heard someone in the crowd say softly, "We are just small sections. We don't dare to get involved in the affairs of the lords." This person spoke very softly, but his voice easily spread throughout the area. It was obvious that he was speaking to Tantai Ruchuan. Sure enough, Tantai Ruchuan's attitude immediately confirmed Du Xiaofu's guess. His gaze swept across the crowd like a hook and stared directly at the person who had just spoken. It was a mid-stage God-seizing expert. Then, Tantai Ruchuan's eyes hardened fiercely. His figure shot out, and in an instant, he rushed in front of the man and slammed his palm down. After a muffled sound, the God-seizing expert's body was smashed like a watermelon, exploding into a bloody mist that filled the sky. This action caused the surrounding crowd to be greatly shocked. Since you've come to this large formation space, then everything is not up to you, Tantai Ruchuan said coldly. His eyes slowly swept across the crowd. Everyone who met his gaze looked away in panic. He continued, "The Divine General's estate is not here to negotiate with you. Those who dare to disobey will be killed without mercy. I've already said that if any of you want to be a loyal and filial son, we will definitely fulfill your wish." His voice was cold and incomparably awe-inspiring, and it carried endless viciousness. The surrounding people of the Yuqing divine kingdom did not dare to open their mouths again. Although many people were extremely indignant, no one dared to say anything. The fate of that person just now was the best deterrent. It was also at this moment that He Zhibai stepped out in a timely manner. He looked straight at Tantai Ruchuan, who was standing proudly, and said, "Tantai Ruchuan, not only do the 7 divine generals' estate want to rebel and offend the imperial majesty, but you also want to become enemies with all the forces of the divine kingdom?" With He Zhibai taking the lead and saying such a sentence, the thousands of people let out a long breath. This was exactly what they wanted to say, but did not dare to say. So what if we become enemies with the entire Yuqing divine kingdom? The only outcome for those who dare to rebel against us is death. Tantai Ruchuan's long hair fluttered in the wind as he spoke in a loud voice. He was incomparably overbearing. "Since you've said so much, let's fight." At this time, Du Xiaofu came out with his purple robe fluttering in the wind. It was meaningless to continue talking. Today, only a battle could determine the final victor. We have 3 true severing experts and the help of the divine desolate heavenlock array. You alone dare to fight us? I don't know where your courage comes from. This time, before Tantai Ruchuan could say anything, the bare-chested brawny man, Helian Shang, coldly snorted and said, "Brat, this brat's methods are very strange. Let's join hands and take him down as quickly as possible." When Yiming said cautiously as he stood beside Tantai Ruchuan and Helian Shang. He had fought with Du Xiaofu before, so he had a rough idea of his opponent's strength. He didn't dare to let his guard down. However, he also believed that if the 3 of them joined forces, it would be extremely difficult for the other party to truly contend against them. "I'll give you a chance. Release the person behind you." Du Xiaofu wasn't in a hurry to make a move, and he spoke like this instead. Subsequently, a light flashed beside him, and a woman's figure appeared and was captured in his hand. This woman was extremely beautiful. Her elegant face and watery eyes were suffused with a few wisps of peach blossom, and she was peerlessly charming. She was precisely Tantai Ruwei, who was captured by Du Xiaofu and then trapped in the desolate ancient space. Big sister. After seeing Tantai Ruwei, Tantai Ruchuan couldn't help but be shocked and cry out involuntarily. "You want to use one person to exchange for the 5 people behind us? Brat, your wishful thinking is quite good." Helian Shang's voice was droning, but it couldn't conceal the killing intent within it. "Du Xiaofu, if you know what's good for you, then immediately release Miss Tantai. Otherwise, I'll make you beg for death." When Yiming spoke coldly and glanced at Tantai Ruchuan, as if he was afraid that Tantai Ruchuan would do something unwise. They never imagined that Tantai Ruwei would actually fall into Du Xiaofu's hands. This caused them to be slightly restrained when they made a move. "Absolutely. You can go and pick her up yourselves." Du Xiaofu was quite straightforward. He directly threw Tantai Ruwei fiercely and swiftly swept up into the sky. "Big sister." Tantai Ruchuan didn't even think about it. His figure rose into the sky and directly rushed towards the figure in the sky, catching Tantai Ruwei in his hands. At the same time, the moment Du Xiaofu threw Tantai Ruwei, he disappeared from where he was in the blink of an eye. "Be careful." When Yiming suddenly became alert and realized that something was wrong, he immediately turned around, but it was already too late. Under the mysteriousness of the first style Fuyao, Du Xiaofu arrived at the side of the 3rd prince, 4th prince, 5th prince, and the others in an instant. A tyrannical force swept out and enveloped these people. Just as when Yiming's attack was about to reach him, his figure disappeared from his original position. Following that, the 3 princes and a few others also disappeared at the same time. "Bastard!" when Yiming cursed, but there was nothing he could do. He could only helplessly watch as Du Xiaofu returned to the side of He Zhibai and the others. After comprehending the law of space, one of the 4 great primordial laws, to a certain extent, its mysteriousness was truly immeasurable. This kid's methods are really strange. Helian Shang didn't have time to do anything at all and could only mutter in a droning voice. "Kid, you actually dared to hurt my big sister. I'll tear you into pieces." At this time, Tantai Ruchuan also returned with Tantai Ruwei. However, Just as he probed the situation in his sister's body, his expression changed abruptly. His originally calm face was abnormally ferocious. At this time, Tantai Rue's spirit gate was shattered, and her meridians were destroyed. She had already become a cripple, and her cultivation had turned into nothing. And all of this was what Du Xiaofu had intended to do just now. 3 imperial brothers, Brother Yoguang, Brother Yizong. The little princess quickly ran to Du Xiaofu's side and shouted at the few people he had saved. Among these 5 people, other than the 3 princes of the imperial family, there were 2 others, Hua Yoguang of the Martial Emperor Divine General's estate and Duan Yizong of the Cloud Spirit General's estate. Their bodies were wrapped in layers of multicolored light, which resonated with some mysterious force in the surrounding space, firmly binding their cultivations. However, under the full power of Du Xiaofu, a truth-severing stage expert, this kind of restriction was completely undone in a short period of time. 2 of them are in the truth-severing stage, and the other 3 are in the perfection of the God-seizing stage. After probing the cultivation of these 5 people, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but be moved. Among them, the 3rd Prince Yu Chengxi was dressed in golden battle armor, dazzling, and the truth-severing stage aura was faintly discernible, deep and vast. In addition, Duan Yizong of the Cloud Spirit General's estate was broad-headed, domineering, and awe-inspiring, and was also in the early stages of the truth-severing stage. Other than these 2 people, the 4th Prince, the 5th Prince, and Hua Yoguang were all in the perfection of the God-seizing stage, and were only a step away from the truth-severing stage, and were also extremely extraordinary. Most likely, if they had refined the primal chaos chi in time, they should have been able to break through long ago. This is bad. When Yiming cried out. Originally, if it was only Du Xiaofu who was in the truth-severing stage, the 3 of them working together, in addition to the power of the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation, were enough to take him down. But now, with the addition of the 3rd Prince Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong, the situation became serious again. "Brat, I want you dead," Tantai Ruchuan shouted, his voice and expression stern, carrying a large amount of ferocious lightning light, pouncing towards Du Xiaofu. His sister's cultivation was crippled, and this made Tantai Ruchuan furious. "You've already said the same words many times. I really don't know where you get so much nonsense from. If you want to fight, then let's fight." Du Xiaofu shook the purple robe on his body, and without dodging or evading, he directly faced the attack. The great battle between the truth-severing stage experts instantly began, and it was incomparably terrifying. Helian Shang, when Yiming, Tantai Ruchuan, you 7 great divine generals have no respect for the imperial sect, and your crimes are punishable by death. Watching Du Xiaofu and Tantai Ruchuan fight together, the 3rd Prince Yu Chengxi suddenly spoke domineeringly, his voice shaking the sky. After a brief transmission between the 6th Prince and the little princess, he knew of Du Xiaofu's identity and the relationship between the few of them now, which made the 3rd Prince and the others feel much more confident. As he spoke, a long spear suddenly appeared in Yu Chengxi's hand. The body of the spear coiled like a dragon, as if it was alive, emitting a fierce and domineering aura, causing one's heart to palpitate. He took a step forward, his battle armor humming, his long spear whimpering, and thousands of golden rays piercing the sky. "If I can catch you once, then I can catch you a second time," the bare-chested brawny Helian Shang said in a deep voice. He had already recovered from his previous shock and said this. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A stream of light rushed out from Helian Shang's hand and flew into the air, releasing a strange power that intertwined with the surrounding space. It was a compass, and it was extremely similar to the one Du Xiaofu took from Wen Yiming, but there were differences. On this compass, strange patterns that were invisible to the naked eye spread out, extending into the void, and connected with the multicolored rays of light. In a split second, a terrifying power fluctuated, and a strange pressure descended, suppressing everyone's primordial spirit. It was incomparably terrifying. The surrounding experts of the seizing divinity stage all felt the pressure increase under this huge pressure, as if they were carrying a mountain on their backs. As for those with weaker cultivations, they directly collapsed to the ground, their faces pale. Mysterious lock compass. Quickly put it away. Seeing Helian Shang use the compass to control the divine wilderness heaven lock formation to fight the enemy, Wen Yiming immediately broke out in a cold sweat and immediately shouted. Previously, he lost the mysterious lock compass, and it was because of this action that Du Xiaofu took advantage of the loophole and took it away. If Helian Shang was not careful, he would probably follow in his footsteps. At that time, he would lose the help of the divine wilderness heaven lock formation, and the opponent also had 3 severing divinity stage experts, and among them was Du Xiaofu, this abnormal person. His side would really be in a desperate situation. This made Wen Yiming turn pale with fright. However, his warning was useless, because when the mysterious lock compass rushed into the sky, Du Xiaofu had already moved. He carried the 9 divine thunder cauldrons and forced Tantai Ruchuan to retreat. Under the terrifying power of the 9 cauldrons, Tantai Ruchuan was instantly injured, and blood flew out from his mouth. Du Xiaofu's figure flashed, and he directly rushed to the location of the compass. He used the same trick again, and a huge light palm waved out, seizing the mysterious lock compass in his hand. Similarly, under Helian Shang's control, the compass shook violently, and it wanted to break free from Du Xiaofu's control. At the same time, a ferocious attack came, and it blasted towards Du Xiaofu. The space trembled nonstop, and rays of colorful flowing light danced, as if they had turned into peerless sharp swords, and they attacked quickly and violently. "Stop him quickly!" Wen Yiming shouted, and he moved first, charging towards Du Xiaofu. Helian Shang and Tantai Ruchuan were not willing to fall behind, and their figures rose into the air, wanting to stop Du Xiaofu. However, this time, they were not able to make a move in time, because at the same time they moved, Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong also moved. These 2 people used their full strength and blocked the 3 people for a moment, so that they were unable to affect Du Xiaofu in any way. In this way, in just a few breaths' time, Du Xiaofu successfully grasped the mysterious lock compass in his hands. It's so easy to get it. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile, and he was extremely happy. Although with the compass in his hands, he was unable to control the divine barren heaven lock formation, but at the very least, it could greatly weaken the strength of the 7 divine generals' manners, and it would be much easier to deal with them. Du Xiaofu played with the compass in his hands, and then he threw it into the ancient, desolate space. After feeling that the power of the compass was completely cut off from him, Helian Shang's face was so black that it was about to drip water. His lips trembled, and the anger in his heart soared to the 9 heavens. Careless. He was too careless. If it was an ordinary person, not to mention taking the mysterious lock compass, it would not be easy to even get close to it. He only needed to move his mind, and he could mobilize the enormous power here and crush it into ashes. But who knew that this brat in front of him, with the help of the spatial laws, would approach the compass before he could even react? In addition, with Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong holding them back, he, Tanai Ruchuan, and Wen Yiming were unable to stop them at all. They could only watch as the key to controlling the great formation fell into the hands of others. At this moment, Helian Shang regretted his past actions. He regretted that he did not listen to Wen Yiming's words, and did not pay too much attention to the purple-robed youth. He only treated him as an ordinary truth-severing stage cultivator like himself. After losing the divine barren heaven lock formation, this huge reliance, what capital do you have to continue fighting? Du Xiaofu sneered, and looked at the 3 truth-severing stage cultivators playfully. Du Xiaofu, we will definitely not let you leave here alive. Helian Shang's anger burst forth, shaking the void until it distorted. What time is it now? You still dare to talk nonsense here? Yu Chengliang snorted coldly, his gaze sweeping the surroundings, and said to the thousands of gods seizing stage cultivators, "Everyone, the 7 divine generals' manners are conspiring to overthrow the royal family. Their ambitions are unforgivable, and their entire families will be executed. If there are any who follow the royal family to conquer the rebels, this prince guarantees that if there are any contributions, the royal family will confer rewards in the future." Yu Chengliang's voice was loud and clear, and it reverberated through this space, entering the ears of everyone. However, after such words were spoken, no one in the crowd was moved. It was also for the same reason that they could not get involved in the struggle between the Yuqing Divine Kingdom's royal family and the seven divine generals' manners. If they rashly made a choice and chose the wrong side in the end, it would only lead to a fatal disaster. It was safer to stay out of this and protect themselves. Seeing this situation, Du Xiaofu's lips curled up again, and he transmitted a message to Yu Chengliang. Originally, Yu Chengliang was still frowning, but after hearing Du Xiaofu's words, he could not help but relax his brows. He turned his gaze to Helian Shang and the others again, and said, "People of the seven divine generals' manners, no matter how much you have calculated, you have still miscalculated one thing. My father is still alive, and even if you join hands, you will not be able to take away the authority of the royal family. The great Yuqing Divine Kingdom is not something that you rascals can touch." What? Once these words were spoken, everyone was shocked, especially the people of the seven divine generals' manners. It was as if there was a sudden clap of thunder in their ears. Countless people of the various forces in the divine kingdom were also shocked by this news, and they could not help but discuss it. The divine emperor is not dead? Is this true? If the divine emperor is not dead, how dare the seven divine generals' manners? Yes, how dare they steal the authority of the royal family? This is tantamount to courting death. Everyone was shocked, but at the same time, they were somewhat confused. Tantai Ruchuan said that the divine emperor was dead, which was why the seven divine generals' manners plotted against him. They would not do something that they were not confident in. But now, the sixth prince said that the divine emperor was still alive, and this could not help but let people's imagination run wild. However, most people were not willing to believe him, and only felt that Yu Chengliang was trying to confuse the enemy, and at the same time, make the people of the various forces fight for the royal family. Ha ha ha. Yu Chengliang, do you think that we will believe you just because of your words? The divine emperor's soul flame has been extinguished, and this news was covered up very tightly. I'm afraid that even you did not know about it. When Yiming laughed loudly and looked at Yu Chengliang mockingly, the few divine generals' manners dared to lay their hands on the royal family only after they received the exact news. Otherwise, even if each of them had the courage, they would not dare to raise their swords against the royal family's disciples. If the divine emperor was angry, all of their heads would not be enough to kill him. Therefore, when he heard Yu Chengliang say such words, Wen Yiming naturally did not believe it. Yu Chengliang, do you think everyone is a fool? Tantai Ruchuan and Helian Shang also did not believe it. This time, they were not the only ones who took action. In the outside world, the seven divine generals' manners, led by the seven divine generals, were also brewing a drastic change. Heaven's evil can be defied, but self-inflicted evil is the hardest to bear. Suddenly, Yu Chengliang sighed and said, "Do you think that my father did not see through the intentions of the seven divine generals' manners? Now that things have come to this, I'm not afraid to tell you that the reason why my father faked his death was to ferret out all of you, and to eliminate all the malignant tumors of the divine kingdom in one go, to prevent future troubles. You have exhausted all your schemes, but I'm afraid you did not expect this." The sixth prince's voice was cold, and he looked at the people of the seven divine generals' manners as if he was looking at a pile of dead people. There was even a strong sense of pity in his eyes. Chapter 2748. No, that's impossible. Tantai Ruchuan's legs went soft, and he almost fell from the sky. He looked at Yu Chengliang in shock, his eyes as wide as copper bells. He could not believe what Yu Chengliang had said. Is that really the case? Helian Shang and Wen Yiming also felt that their throats were blocked, as if a fishbone was stuck in their throats. If what Yu Chengliang said was true, and the divine emperor was not dead, and everything was within his calculations, then everyone from the seven divine generals' residences would die without a burial place. Humph! You really won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Yu Chengliang snorted and said word by word, "Let me ask you, which one of you saw my father fall with your own eyes? Was it yourselves, or the seven divine generals behind you?" His gaze swept across the people from the seven divine generals' residences one by one, emitting a dazzling light and threatening aura. Seeing such a gaze, Tantai Ruchuan, Helian Shang, and when Yiming's faces turned ashen. They could not answer this question at all. In fact, with the status of everyone present, they also did not know where this information came from. They only knew that their elders had bestowed upon them this divine wilderness heaven-lock formation and 2 compasses, and ordered them to do their best to capture the princes and princesses in the origin space. If it was difficult, then they would kill them all. When Yiming and the other 2 could guess that there must be an even stronger existence behind the 7 divine generals' residences, but they did not know the specific identity. But at this time, if everything was under the divine emperor's control, could they still count on those big shots behind him? No one could say for sure. Therefore, at this moment, they could not help but feel endless despair in their hearts. The divine emperor is not dead? Which one is the truth? Looking at the 6th prince's expression, it seems like this matter is true. If the divine emperor is still alive, then the 7 divine generals' residences are doomed. Around them, the thousands of God-seizing experts were also discussing. At this time, although they could not be sure who was telling the truth, compared to the attitudes of the 2 parties, they still believed the 6th prince more. Helian Shang, when Yiming, Tantai Ruchuan, prepare to pay the price. The 3rd prince Yu Cheng, she sternly shouted. He raised his spear and pierced through the sky, directly attacking Tantai Ruchuan. In secret, Du Xiaofu and Yu Qingliang had already communicated with him, so when he heard Yu Qingliang's words, he appeared extremely calm, as if everything was under his control. The likes of you can't kill us. When Yiming furrowed his brows and shouted loudly, cut the crap. Kill. Duan Yizong's figure shot forward, his entire body exuding a boundless aura, directly attacking him. In the next instant, Du Xiaofu and Helian Shang moved as well. A dazzling golden light shot out from Helian Shang's body. It carried with it a sharp aura, as if it could pierce through all existences. The golden light pierced countless holes in the void, and he stood in the center like a god. Without the divine wilderness heaven-lock formation, you are not even a fart. Du Xiaofu said softly, waving out a terrifying thunder and lightning that swept towards Helian Shang. At the same time, with a flip of his palm, the 9 divine lightning cauldrons moved in response, carrying with them the power to suppress heaven and earth as they crashed towards Helian Shang. In an instant, the most terrifying battle erupted in this strange space. Many seizing divinity realm experts all retreated. This was the battlefield of true severing realm cultivators, and no one dared to stay in the center. Otherwise, what awaited them was to be smashed to pieces by the extremely terrifying aftershocks. The 3rd prince Yu Chengshi fought against Tanai Ruchuan, and the divine general Yunling Estates Duan Yizong fought against Wen Yiming. These 4 people had all broken through to true severing realm not long ago, and all of them had grasped a complete law of matter. Their cultivations could be said to be equally matched, and for a moment, it was difficult to determine who would win. The void was exploding, and this colorful space shook violently, as if doomsday had arrived. Rays of resplendent light shot out, and terrifying attacks swept out. The sky trembled, and the earth cracked. As for the seizing divinity realm experts of the 7 great divine generals' estate, they were unable to participate at all. They could only hide in the distance and watch in shock as the true severing realm experts destroyed the heavens and earth. Void 8 trigrams, rise for me. In the fierce battle with Helian Shang, Du Xiaofu let out an explosive roar. His hands formed seals and flipped rapidly, and his 10 fingers drew a strange trajectory. A huge 8 trigrams diagram formed above his head, and accompanying it was a terrifying pressure that covered the sky and earth that descended, causing Helian Shang's gaze to tremble. Boom, boom, boom. Chi, chi, chi. Huff, huff, huff. Under the 8 trigrams diagram, all living things were born, ever-changing. There, heavenly thunder resounded, earth fire rose, mountains moved, rivers roared, strong winds howled. The vast domineering domain unfolded, reflecting everything in one place, causing the space around Du Xiaofu to become his unique domain. Not long after, Helian Shang, who was caught off guard, was enveloped by Du Xiaofu's space domain. His robust body struggled within, letting out a roar that shook the void, but he was unable to escape. The last time Du Xiaofu and Wen Yiming were fighting, the other party had used the divine desolate heaven lock formation to forcefully break through Du Xiaofu's domain and escape. But this time, the mysterious lock compass on Helian Shang's body had been forcefully taken away by Du Xiaofu and was no longer able to activate the power of the formation. As a result, in just a dozen breaths of time, the most outstanding successor of Divine General Yin He's estate was captured by Du Xiaofu. After a few restrictions landed on his body, Helian Shang was thrown into the desolate ancient space. Not good. Helian has been captured. When Yiming and Tantai Ruchuan, who were fighting fiercely, were greatly shocked. Since Du Xiaofu could enter the origin space, then he must have only been at the seizing deity realm before. Like them, breaking through to the severing truth realm was definitely something that happened recently. But what frightened them was that this purple-robed youth's strength was actually able to directly crush Helian Shang. It had to be said that the space domain, one of the four great primordial laws, was really too mysterious. It was not something that ordinary people could deal with. Retreat quickly. With that kid here, the origin space plan has already been declared a failure. When Yiming already had some understanding of Du Xiaofu. At this time, seeing Helian Shang defeated so quickly made him feel despair. He did not even think about it. He directly broke away from Duan Yizong's entanglement and quickly fled into the distance. When Yiming did not want to stay a moment longer. If Du Xiaofu attacked again, it was very likely that his life would be lost here. Retreat. Tantai Ruchuan was also very decisive. He immediately pulled away from Yu Chengxi and rushed into the crowd of people on his side. He picked up Tanai Ruwei and then followed Wen Yiming. Young Master Tantai and Young Master Wen have both run away. Let's escape quickly. Among the people of the 7 great divine generals' estates, someone exclaimed. Without waiting for these words to fall, everyone had already fled in all directions, scattering like birds and beasts. The situation was already clear. If they continued to fight, the result could already be foreseen. Without absolute certainty of victory, no one wanted to die in vain. Kill. Don't let any one of the 7 great divine generals' estates go. Yu Chengliang roared and suddenly charged toward the seizing deity realm powerhouses. At the same time, He Zhibai and Yu Chengyu moved at the same time. The 4th Prince Yu Chenggu, the 5th Prince Yu Chengqi, and Hua Youguang of the Martial Emperor Divine General's estate did not delay and began to chase after the seizing deity realm powerhouses. When Yiming, Tantai Ruchuan, you can't escape. Kill. Leave your lives. Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong's killing intent soared, and they began to chase after Wen Yiming and Tanai Ruchuan. However, with their speed, they could only keep up with the two of them. They could not really catch up with them. However, with the existence of Du Xiaofu, Wen Yiming and Tantai Ruchuan were blocked again and again, and their speed of escape was greatly reduced. In this way, Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong caught up with them in a short time, and powerful attacks landed on them one after another. You want to take our lives? Don't even think about it. Wen Yiming's face was ferocious, and his eyes shot out a fierce look. He hated Du Xiaofu to the core. If it were not for the existence of this guy, it would not have taken them much effort to get rid of Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong. This was not the point. The point was that today's situation was caused by this bastard Du Xiaofu. If it wasn't for him killing Dai Xuanjun, Wang Qishuan, and Zhong Su, if it wasn't for him capturing Tanai Ruwei, if it wasn't for him seizing the 2 feng shui compasses, Xian Tian and Xian Suo, everything would have been within their plans, and how could it have developed to such a state? If this little bastard had not interfered, they would have been preparing to celebrate. Surrender. You won't be able to escape. Du Xiaofu shouted coldly, and the first form of Fuyao was executed repeatedly, constantly intercepting the 2 of them who were escaping. However, it was a pity that both of them were prepared. Every time he disappeared from the void, they would prepare the strongest defense and increase their speed to the maximum. Moreover, before his domineering domain enveloped them, they had already retreated far away and did not want to fight head-on. In this way, it was not easy for Du Xiaofu to really intercept them. Therefore, even though Du Xiaofu's side was 3 against 2, they were not able to grasp the absolute upper hand. They could only allow Tantai Ruchuan and Wen Yiming to quickly escape, getting further and further away. Under such circumstances, the 5 of them, 2 in the front and 3 in the back, quickly flashed an endless distance. Early on, when Du Xiaofu, Yu Chengxi, and Duan Yizong were chasing after Tantai Ruchuan and Wen Yiming, countless experts had gathered in the huge canyon within the range of the Divine Wilderness Heaven Lock Formation. Most of them were at the Void Return realm and were unable to go deep. In the depths of the canyon, figures floated above the water surface. Since these people were able to come here, most of them were at the God-seizing realm. After Du Xiaofu revealed that there was a great formation hidden here, many people chose to go deeper, diving into the water to explore, wanting to find the real mastermind behind the scenes. However, there were still many experts who stayed behind. They did not want to take the risk and only wanted to stay here and wait for the final result. These figures floated in the air, each of them with their auras restrained, accumulating endless power, ready to deal with any unforeseen events that might occur at any time. Among them, there were 2 unprepossessing young men standing there. Ever since they came here, they had not said a word, only quietly standing in the void. No one cared about their existence. These 2 people seemed to be aloof from the world. However, while countless people were nervously watching the surroundings for any possible movements, they were conversing in a voice that could only be heard by each other. Senior Brother Zhao, don't you think the elders in the sect are overthinking things? With the Divine Wilderness Heaven Lock Formation here, even if those people are a group of idiots, there shouldn't be any big trouble. Among the 2, a young man dressed in gray said indifferently, Junior Brother Wei Rong, you must not be careless. This time, we must succeed. Failure is not allowed. Therefore, the sect sent the 2 of us here to prevent any accidents from happening. The other black-clothed young man hugged the fatty and said softly, appearing rather cautious, it's because of this mission that we lost the chance to take the sect's assessment. The space in the Sacred Ground's hands is much better than the Yu Qing Divine Kingdoms. It contains countless opportunities. The gray-clothed man said unhappily, as if he was very upset about coming to the origin space. As long as we succeed in this mission, the benefits we obtain will not be any less than the assessment. Now that we have come to this step, the 3 princes and the people from the other 2 divine generals' residences have already entered the Divine Wilderness Heaven Lock Formation. The matter here should be over soon. If that's the case, we can let people open the origin space from the outside and leave this place. The black-clothed man's lips curled into a smile as he said unhurriedly, let's end this quickly. I can't wait to get out. If we can make it in time, we still have a chance to enter the Sacred Ground's space. The gray-clothed young man mumbled, his eyes filled with urgency. Actually, there are quite a few good things in this origin space. When the black-clothed man saw this, he smiled faintly and said, after we take down the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom in the future, we still have to come here to search. Perhaps we can obtain some unexpected benefits. After we take down the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom, everything here will belong to the Ju Spirit's Sacred Ground. The gray-clothed young man also smiled. The origin space could not be compared to the Sacred Ground space, but it was indeed extraordinary. After the 2 of them succeeded in this mission, it was inevitable that they would want to enter this space to search for opportunities. Just as the 2 of them were talking, the black-clothed man suddenly made a sound of acknowledgement and frowned naturally. Then, he quickly took out an item from his cosmos bag and placed it in his hand. It was a compass. Something's not right. Almost at the same time, the gray-clothed man also realized that something was wrong. A similar compass appeared in his hand. At this moment, the 2 compasses in their hands were constantly vibrating and emitting a buzzing sound. It was as if they were being suppressed by some strange force, causing them to tremble nonstop. Oh no, something must have happened. The 2 of them looked at each other and spoke at the same time. Bastard! You can't even handle such a small matter. How dare you call yourself one of the 7 divine generals' residences a bunch of good-for-nothings? The gray-clothed man suddenly cursed loudly with extreme anger. Let's go and take a look. The black-clothed man and the gray-clothed young man shot forward and suddenly plunged into the water below, disappearing without a trace. The two of them suddenly plunged into the water, causing many people to be shocked. However, no one said anything about it. They just watched quietly as the two of them disappeared without a trace. In the large formation space, Du Xiaofu, Yu Chengxi, and Duan Yizong followed closely behind Wen Yiming and Tantai Ruchuan, constantly attacking them. In the midst of such a battle, Du Xiaofu separated a wisp of his primordial spirit and entered the ancient, barren space. It would be great if I could refine these two compasses. Then, I could borrow the power of this large formation to capture the two of them together. In the ancient barren space, Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit transformed into his original body. His body frowned as he thought to himself. Two compasses floated in front of him. Their shapes were similar, but they had their own differences. He had already tested them. These two compasses contained extremely powerful primordial spirit energy, forming an incomparably domineering imprint that had a faint connection with the divine barren heaven lock formation. However, Du Xiaofu was unable to erase this primordial spirit imprint. Otherwise, the divine barren heaven lock formation would be under his control. This was a huge temptation. Looks like I can only slowly think of a way. Du Xiaofu's gaze swept across the ancient barren space. In the distance, Elder Kong's skeleton was sitting cross-legged on the ground. His body was emitting an unfathomable aura as he was slowly but continuously recovering. On the other side, a figure wrapped in endless light was lying on the ground. As usual, there was no movement. This person's identity was very likely to be the dean of Tianwu Academy. Not far from Du Xiaofu, an extremely beautiful woman was recuperating. She was He Jixin. Her injuries were extremely serious. The injuries left behind by using the Netherworld Fire Withering Soul Curse were not something that could be healed in a short period of time. I'll try my best and see if I can erase this imprint. Du Xiaofu pondered for a moment before making such a decision. After that, his original body in the outside world transmitted a few words to Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong before entering the ancient barren space with a flash. The wisp of primordial spirit that had entered the ancient barren space previously entered his original body and fused into one. Just as all of this was completed, a golden light suddenly burst out from Du Xiaofu's forehead. Accompanied by an earth-shaking roar, the primordial spirit of the Crimson Horse Monkey stepped out from the air and occupied the space above his head. Refined, Du Xiaofu stretched out his hand and beckoned, bringing the profound heaven compass before him. Next, his primordial spirit that was enveloped in golden light descended from the sky. Endless light enveloped the compass and bound it within. Waves of powerful energy surged and endlessly entered the compass, colliding fiercely with the powerful primordial spirit energy within the compass. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At the same time, the other profound lock compass trembled and emitted a loud trembling sound. As if it had sensed a fierce danger, it struck towards Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit. Chapter 2749. The mysterious lock compass struck out horizontally. With a huge impact, it caused the ancient space to ripple as it charged towards Du Xiaofu's redbone horse monkey origin soul. However, this kind of power was unable to affect Du Xiaofu too much. There is a secret connection between these two compasses. If I touch one, the other one will also sense it. Du Xiaofu's heart was heavy as he carefully felt the connection between the two compasses. At the same time, he waved his hand and shot out a ball of lightning, restricting the mysterious lock compass within it so that it could not approach his primordial spirit. However, the mysterious lock compass that flew out instead started to spin, and it ceaselessly revolved around the Crimson Horse Monkey's primordial spirit that was steaming with golden light. Waves of whimpering sounds came from it as if it was alive. If there are more than two compasses, then when I try to refine them, will the other compasses also sense it? Just as Du Xiaofu was about to continue refining, he thought of such a possibility. He could not help but raise his eyebrows. If that was the case, then it could explain another problem. Perhaps there were still people hiding in the dark in the origin space who had not shown themselves. At the same time, everything he was doing now should have aroused the other party's vigilance. Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu unconsciously sent a trace of power out of the ancient, desolate space to observe the movements outside. At this time, Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong were still closely chasing after Wen Yiming and Tantai Ruchuan. However, after Du Xiaofu suddenly left, the two of them suddenly heaved a long sigh of relief. However, they did not dare to stop as they were afraid that the purple-robed youth would come back and join forces with the third prince and Duan Yizong. That would be an extremely terrible thing for them. If there were only these two people chasing after them, they had a high chance of successfully escaping. Let's try to refine this compass first. Du Xiaofu withdrew his perception. His gaze was heavy as he quietly looked at the mysterious heaven compass in front of him. He had already made preparations. He had let Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong leave behind a trace of their primordial spirit power in his body. If anything happened outside, they could use the connection between their primordial spirits to inform him at any time. The reason why he let the two of them leave behind a trace of their primordial spirits was to prevent the two of them from escaping. Du Xiaofu did not think too much. He silently closed his eyes. Roar! Above his head, the gigantic scarlet horse, primordial spirit roar. When the trace of primordial spirit power entered, Du Xiaofu saw an extremely dazzling scene. Just like the deepest part of the divine wilderness heaven-lock array, it was filled with a myriad of colors. It was like ribbons were dancing in the air. It was extremely beautiful, and it was these ribbons of different colors that were filled with an extremely powerful killing aura. They were like wind blades that slashed over. In an instant, they slashed at Du Xiaofu's trace of primordial spirit power. Roar! The scarlet horse primordial spirit outside let out another earth-shaking roar. Even more power poured in. Waves of golden light lingered, forming the image of the scarlet horse monkey once again. At the same time, even more ribbons swept over and slashed at Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit. What a powerful primordial spirit power! Facing such a powerful killing move, Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit was moved. He could feel a terrifying aura from those ribbons. This was definitely not a power that an ordinary person's primordial spirit could possess. At the very least, to the current Du Xiaofu, it had not reached such a terrifying state. Could it be set up by an immortal realm expert? Du Xiaofu guessed. He deeply felt that this primordial spirit power was very likely set up by an immortal realm expert in the space of the profound heaven compass. And the greater possibility was that the entire profound wasteland heaven-lock array outside was something that belonged to that expert. Without any time to think, he saw ribbons flying in the air, carrying with them the howling of the wind as they attacked. Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit power immediately set up layer after layer of lightning. The ribbons slashed at the lightning as if they were crushing dry weeds. They instantly slashed through all the lightning. If not for Du Xiaofu using the absolute hegemony domain at the same time, they would probably have slashed at his primordial spirit again. Too powerful. The lightning laws can't shake it at all. Du Xiaofu pondered in his heart. Controlling the absolute hegemony domain, he froze the ribbons that were attacking him in mid-air. The terrifying pressure shook, but it could not crush them. This made Du Xiaofu's heart sink even more. God-binding grip. Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit shouted coldly. The red-bone horse monkey stretched out his palm and clenched at those ribbons. Boom! A huge force burst forth, and the space instantly collapsed. Those ribbons that were approaching finally exploded. Burning the heavens, break for me! Du Xiaofu roared again. The fire laws were unleashed. A large area of fire surged and spread out in the void. It directly covered those ribbons and burned them fiercely. However, this method did not cause any damage to the colorful ribbons. Instead, it made the ribbons even more powerful. The laws of matter are ineffective? Du Xiaofu's gaze trembled. Such a scene was inconceivable. He had used the lightning laws and fire laws to kill them, but they all ended in failure. It was as if under the attack of these two laws, those ribbons were not afraid at all. As for the laws of space, they could obstruct and even kill them. This made Du Xiaofu's eyebrows jump. He thought of such a possibility. It seemed that the laws of matter were ineffective against them. Where did you come from? How dare you enter this old man's space compass? Just as Du Xiaofu was feeling the pressure, a domineering voice rang out and spread throughout the space. Then, under his shocked gaze, the colorful ribbons that filled the sky changed and gathered in one place. Finally, they turned into an illusory figure. This was a hale and hearty old man. He had white hair and a youthful face. His eyes were like the sun, blooming with golden light. He had an oppressive aura. On his body, there was an aura as deep and vast as the sea. It unconsciously surged out, as if it could suppress a part of the world. Primordial spirit body. It's the master of the divine wasteland heaven-lock formation. Du Xiaofu instantly understood that the person who was able to lay down such a powerful primordial spirit power in the compass space was undoubtedly the master of the divine wasteland heaven-lock formation. And from the might emitted from the other party's body, Du Xiaofu could determine that this was definitely a terrifying expert. It's actually the scarlet pheasant monkey's primordial spirit. Kid, who are you? Why did you barge into this old man's compass space? The old man looked at Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit and walked towards him step by step. At the same time, his primordial spirit body emitted a tyrannical aura that swept towards Du Xiaofu. Although his words were a question, his pair of old but spirited eyes contained undisguised killing intent. Are you the owner of this compass? Being forced by that powerful aura, Du Xiaofu unconsciously took half a step back and asked the old man opposite him with a burning gaze. Kid, you still haven't answered this old man's question. The old man completely ignored Du Xiaofu's question and said to himself, this compass is the item that controls the divine wasteland heaven-lock formation. It actually allowed you to barge into this space. In that case, the mysterious heavenly compass has fallen into your hands? He stepped forward, and colorful ribbons once again floated out from his body that was emitting light. They were like spears that pierced through the void, carrying a terrifying aura as they shot towards the chest of Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit. You are the person behind the 7 divine generals' estates? Du Xiaofu did not dare to be careless. In front of such an expert, he used his full strength and unleashed his absolute hegemony domain to the extreme. At the same time, he extended his palm again and again, and the grip of God binding shook the air again and again, shattering the taut ribbons. The opponent was definitely an extremely terrifying expert. Even with Du Xiaofu's current cultivation, he could not help but feel a little flustered. According to his estimation, the old man should be an immortal realm expert. This was too terrifying. To this day, Du Xiaofu had never seen the terror of an immortal realm expert. This sudden encounter made him feel even more pressured. You even know about the 7 divine generals' estates. It seems like this old man's guess was right. The mysterious heavenly compass has really fallen into your hands. The old man said softly as he slowly approached Du Xiaofu. However, he was no longer in a hurry to attack. Instead, he raised his head and stared at the red-bone horse monkey's body that was emitting a golden light. He asked, I'm afraid that at this moment, those people have already been defeated by your hands, and the Origin Spaces plan should not be going smoothly. As he spoke, the old man frowned and scolded, a bunch of good-for-nothings. This old man's divine wasteland heaven-lock formation was handed over to them, and they actually did things like this. It seems like my guess was right. You are the person behind the 7 divine generals' estates. Du Xiaofu did not bat an eyelid as he lightly said, Brat, so what if you know this? Since you dare to have designs on this old man's compass, then leave your life here obediently. The old man snorted and said darkly, You are very extraordinary. With your spatial laws, you can indeed do whatever you want in the origin space. However, all of this is futile. As long as you die, our plan can still proceed as planned. Ha! Hearing these words, Du Xiaofu suddenly burst out laughing. He said, You're going to carry out your plan step by step? What a joke. Ha. Brat, what are you laughing at? Du Xiaofu's sudden laughter stunned the old man, and he could not help but ask, Old man, you still think that your plan is flawless, right? Du Xiaofu suddenly stopped laughing and said coldly, wanting to take advantage of the Yuqing Divine Emperor's fall to seize the power of the imperial family. Your plan is indeed not bad. However, I'm afraid that you have all miscalculated one thing. The Yuqing Divine Emperor is not dead at all. All of your plans are only his plans within his plans. To put it bluntly, you have all been fooled. As he spoke, he looked at the old man mockingly, as if he was looking at an idiot. The old man did not care about the look in his eyes. However, he was shocked by his words and did not speak for a long time. Du Xiaofu was not afraid to tell him the truth. After all, outside the compass was his own ancient, desolate space. Under his control, he did not need to worry that his words would be heard by the old man's real body in the outside world. Brat, is what you said true? The old man was shocked. He immediately took a step forward and asked in a hoarse voice, "Do you think that I am joking with you? You all thought that your plan was flawless, but in reality, it was a mistake. The most important thing is that you have miscalculated. Otherwise, do you think that with the existence of the 7 divine generals' residences, who in the origin space could easily deal with them?" Du Xiaofu laughed coldly and said word by word. The moment he saw the old man's expression, he made up his mind to scare him. After he said these half-truths, even the old man, who was in the immortal stage, would not be able to sit still. Stealing the power of the imperial family was an extremely important matter to him. After knowing that he might have been tricked by the Yuqing Divine Emperor, the old man would definitely lose some of his rationality. Du Xiaofu was not confident that he could defeat such an expert directly. Even if the old man only had a portion of his primordial spirit's power, he was still far from being a match for him. He could only use some tricks. "Brat, I don't care if what you said is true or false. I will kill you first today." After a moment of shock, the old man slowly calmed down and said to Du Xiaofu viciously, "With your primordial spirit's power, you dare to say that you can kill me? I really don't know where you get the courage to say this. Once I am out of the compass, what can you do to me?" Du Xiaofu curled his lips and said disdainfully. Since he was going to put on a show, he had to do it to the end. Who didn't know how to boast? Du Xiaofu was even more familiar with this. He paused for a moment and continued, "I'm afraid that your real body in the outside world is still plotting how to overthrow the imperial family. You must be very proud of it. Thinking about it, it's really laughable. You think that you can trick others, but you don't even know that you are being tricked." Du Xiaofu's mocking expression never stopped. He looked at the old man from the corner of his eyes, and his eyes were full of sarcasm. "What I do is not for a brat like you to tell me what to do." The old man jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He shouted loudly, "Even if what you said is true, I must cut you into 108 pieces today." The old man flew into a rage. He was truly infuriated. Du Xiaofu's words and expression had successfully angered him. He secretly swore in his heart that no matter what happened outside, he would definitely kill this brat to vent some of the hatred in his heart. As he spoke, he made his move. The old primordial spirit's body shone brightly. The 5-colored light condensed and shot out. It entangled in the void and then turned into the shape of a huge dragon, biting toward Du Xiaofu's head. On the dragon's body, there were spots of dragon scales and cold light. Pieces of strong and muscular muscles bulged, showing a domineering power. The dragon's claws were like gold and iron, crushing the void. Even the domineering domain outside Du Xiaofu's body was instantly torn apart by such a blow, extending all the way to his front. So strong. Du Xiaofu's heart almost jumped out of his throat. His eyes were full of extreme shock. The power of the immortal realm was really strong. After the old man's primordial spirit condensed, he had such a terrifying power at the first attack. This made him dare not underestimate him at all. "Void 8 trigrams. Rise for me." Du Xiaofu did not delay at all. The scarlet bone horse monkey's primordial spirit's hands intertwined and changed, condensing a strange hand seal. Immediately, he used his strongest technique. The Void 8 trigrams instantly entrenched itself, and strange scenes appeared in the void. The power of several laws intertwined. Thunder bombarded. Raging flames surged. Space solidified and collapsed. One method after another was used repeatedly. Finally, the long dragon was strangled into nothingness, leaving only small runes that were like mosquitoes dancing in the air. Ugh! After the long dragon was strangled, the scarlet bone horse monkey's primordial spirit's throat also let out a muffled groan. The golden light outside his body dimmed a little. Under the attack of the huge power, he retreated continuously until he was extremely far away. Du Xiaofu had no choice but to be alert. He stared at the old man in front of him cautiously, in case he suddenly attacked again. This was only a strand of the old man's primordial spirit's power, and not his real body. Du Xiaofu could imagine that if he encountered a true immortal realm expert, with his current strength, it would be difficult for him to even escape. He would be directly suppressed and killed. Old dog, you can stay here slowly. I won't stay here with you any longer. Du Xiaofu suppressed the shock in his primordial spirit and said softly. Then, without a second thought, he rushed out of the space. Around his body, the 8 trigrams and various other phenomena in the void followed him and swiftly moved into the distance. Kid, don't leave. How dare you have any ideas about my mysterious heaven compass? I'll tear you into 1,000 pieces today. When the old man saw this, he immediately shouted and quickly chased after Du Xiaofu, wanting to stop him. Old man, you're still a little weak if you want to kill your master Du. So long as I leave the mysterious heaven compass, what can you do to me? Du Xiaofu's enormous primordial spirit didn't even look back as he flashed out, and he shouted with extreme arrogance. Behind him, the old man was still chasing closely, and at the same time, he launched numerous extremely ferocious attacks. However, all of these attacks were minced into nothingness by Du Xiaofu's void 8 trigrams. Little bastard, do you really think you can escape? You can leave the mysterious heaven compass, but do you think I can't? The old man's illusory primordial spirit roared loudly, but a wisp of hesitation flashed through his eyes, and he seemed to be making a decision. After that, he split out an extremely small portion of his primordial spirit's energy and left it in this space, and then he continued to pursue Du Xiaofu. Within the desolate dimension, Du Xiaofu's redbone horse monkey roared, and then he charged out of the mysterious heaven compass. He turned around and looked at the old man who followed closely behind him, and then he laughed strangely and muttered to himself, Old dog, I finally tricked you out.